just like honey, sweet to taste on burning lips. Wanna lie beneath the water, feeling icy fingertips. Soothing nectar to my body, wash the image from my eyes. Dirty streets of hungry people, drink the water, dry your eyes. Let's not look at the reflections, listen to the music made. Drinking water's ease the mind, thoughts of you begin to fade.
The nation is under siege. The nation is under siege.
Good evening, everybody. This is Divided We Stand. I'm Brian Weinstein. It's roughly 8 o'clock. If you're unfamiliar with this channel, this is the Divided We Stand channel on YouTube. We are not a monetized channel, so we ask that you commiserate with us and subscribe. We're not looking for anything from you, just your attention, your ear, and your commiseration. We're on the same team. Also, if you're unfamiliar with our Facebook group page, it is called, appropriately enough, the Divided We Stand group page. If you'd like to become a member, please head on over to Facebook. You'll look for Divided We Stand. There may be a couple of Divided We Stands out there, I'm not sure, but we have the Divided We Stand that has a cover photo of Kamala Harris. So that would be it. So 2 places to go. I believe we do have an Instagram account somewhere, maybe on Twitter, but that's far along between, so we'll see. Tonight we have a special night, as if last night wasn't difficult enough to come on. It was brutal last night, and I think I only had roughly 2.5 hours of sleep. I time it from my watch, and I just laid in bed and just ruminated about the day, and I woke up depressed, grieving, and not knowing where to go with this. And it was at this time that I got a call from my good friend, my old friend from Bowling Green, Ohio. He lives in Toledo. Very, very talented man. He's a poet. He's taught English at university in Bangkok, Thailand. And he's also a nurse. So he has some great insights into this, and I asked him to come on. And I think if there is an antidote to all this negativity, it's good to have Paul on to help give his insights into what happened and where we go from here. I think we need to at least, pause and look at that, and perhaps from that we can work our way back to some type of sanity, because this has been one hell of 9 or 10 years dealing with this lunatic, but more than that, the people who support him. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my good friend, a man who was on the Reality Report for many, many years with me, and that would be Paul Maginley. Paul, I'm going to get the camera to move to you in a second here. I don't know where this is. Give me a second here. And I'll be right with you, folks. Sometimes with this eCam program that I'm using, folks, the windows that I normally use to have all my settings, they keep popping in and out. So I want to make sure that this is working. So we have Paul, just give me a second here. I'm really sorry about this. Okay, I just need to find this. Oh, here we go. I cannot find this goddamn thing. All right, I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to do this. All right, Paul. Until I get my scenes window back. I don't know what's going on here with eCam today. But welcome, Paul. How are you today?
Well, how does one answer that after last night? But first of all, thanks for allowing me on the show for a special one night appearance. Thank you, everybody here. I think I'd probably recognize quite a few of you from our Reality Report days. And hi, Joey. And one thing, some things never change. There's my cat again. We've got. Yes, he's still in the peak of health, and I'm hoping that Dave can join us later.
Yes, he may be joining us later.
What a shock, huh? I mean, I went into last night. I was watching. What's his name again? Canucks. How do you spell it? Kornacki. And I was watching for a few hours, and then I noticed the We Stand was on. Picked it up, and I saw you there, Brian, soldering on, and I thought you did a great job. I mean, you focused on, the 4 or 5 states that really mattered, whereas Kornacki had to, go across the map, and slowly. It just didn't look good for us, and formerly in competitive hockey, you weren't giving up that easily. I mean, you were still hoping for some kind of, last.
I still have dreams of playing. I don't know how that works, Paul, but
how does one describe, the lack of enthusiasm for Kamala that we saw last night? I mean, it was nationwide. It wasn't restricted to a single state. The districts that were heavily supportive of her did not come out with the numbers that Biden had. So that was a bad sign right there. And it was just disappointing. It was as if. And what do we attribute this to, Brian? I mean, low turnout on the Democratic side. I mean, that's the only thing I can assume. I had a friend who told me that 14 million registered Democrats did not vote last night. And I could tell you anecdotally, I talked to probably 4 or 5 friends today, and 2 people within my extended family or very close circles, liberal, did not vote. I mean, this blew me away. It's almost as if, and this is happening in the backdrop of what I consider probably, oh my gosh, the most important election that I can remember. I don't know how you feel about that one, Brian.
Absolutely. I mean, I thought the last 2 were the most important until this one.
Until this one,
right?
I mean, with this, the Supreme Court stacked as it is already. I mean, how can you sit on your butt on election day with? I mean, Trump's administration had been repudiated already with the loss to Biden. Okay, we'd rejected it. We realized it was just a band of criminals, and so, and then we resurrect him like some ugly zombie.
Right.
I mean, so, and this is important because it not only revives the career of what is he? He's 76 years old, 76-year-old, has been. Not only has it resurrected his career, but it also resurrects and even builds up a horrible potential Trump dynasty with all the family members and people that are close to him, all rich, of course, all uncaring, all out for themselves. And, we have created this now. And, I mean, the Trumps are like bed bugs. Stick this out with me. I mean, one smoke bomb doesn't get rid of them. I mean, you got to fumigate them again and again and again and again. I mean, you just can't allow this kind of resurrection. And then we think about the, as I mentioned, the Supreme Court. I mean, how? And then you have reproductive rights. Now, they were already, they've taken over Congress. So he's got Congress. He's got himself and his buddies, and he's got the Supreme Court.
Right.
My friend, we are in trouble.
This is what makes it so depressing. I came to work today, Paul, thinking, here I am. I'm just grieving over this like a death. And one of my colleagues walks in, and I can see she's in tears. Wow. Then I spoke with her husband, and he told me that another, I think it was a supervisor, she had to leave because it was just too much to take. So I didn't see too many people, but those people who I did see had that same mentality that I had. And that's what I think bothers me the most, Paul, is that, we have to have an ability to cope mentally with our lives. And we certainly have had enough, but the extreme mental torture that we go through, and I cannot believe that I'm the only one. It would be narcissistic of me, but this has been such a difficult ride of 9 years. And last night, it's just like it's a continuation of this constant malaise, and you want it to end, but beyond that, as I see it, it's such a danger. Because what we have, I mean, we can look at this at different angles. You can have the pundits who say, well, the Democrats didn't do this. The problem is, you know what? I'm tired of that, Paul. I'm tired of that fucking shit. Excuse my language, because people know better. People know better. They know when somebody's a felon and a con. They know when somebody's doing something wrong. Trump himself knows when he's doing things wrong. He said, he said, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and I could get away with it, because he's saying he could get away with it. He knows it's wrong. And yet, people continually vote. Now, on the other hand, you mentioned the turnout. I think she ended up with, I want to say 63 million votes or something like that. But okay. Biden had 81. So that's a loss of 18 million votes. So something happened. That is something that we need to look at. And the fact that it did happen, now we have to ask, why did that happen? And he didn't have anything spectacular in terms. I think he had something like 70 million votes or something like that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe 6. We have to, actually, somebody will have to like check on that. Let me see if I have that here. I think
I'd like to know how many registered Republicans did not vote last night. If it approaches anything like the 14 million
I would doubt it. They are. See, that's one thing you have to give them credit for. We can say that they generally have to have some type of ignorance to be able to endorse the hatred that you could see on these commercials, this propaganda. By the way, he had 72 million, she had 67, so she was down 14 million, and he actually was down 3 million. So something did happen. We can talk about that in a second, but the fact is, there's something about us or about themselves that compels them to vote for him instead. In fact, you can ask somebody like, is he a bad guy? Yeah, he's a liar, but there's always that conditional there. And I think you need maybe a psychologist to be able to properly address what's going on in the mind of a Republican voter in general. I mean, all of them have different reasons, Paul, but this is frightening because I think this is a paradigm shift in terms of what's happening in this country. I mean, we never had this the way it was. We had Republicans, and we were always a divided country, but not to this degree, and not to the degree that they literally put out propaganda. And
well, what put me on this, Brian, aside from the Supreme Court stacking, I mean, it's as if, Brian, that why even bother put a Democrat on the Supreme Court now? Why just make it all conservative? Because that's what's going to happen. Have we ever seen such lopsided dominance before? I mean, I can't recall.
Not in our lifetime. I mean, I think that's the only thing we can do, Paul. You and I both are, 64, 65, and
this is for years, right? I mean, this is for, what, a decade at least? He'll stick some more Brett Kavanaughs on there that could, live their cretinous lives for decades. I mean,
and I say it's completely acceptable, and that bothers me because, again, I think it's an actual mentality. I obviously studied Russian culture for a large part of my life, and Russians who have lived here or come here, they'll say, that Americans have a different mentality, that there is a thing as a Russian mentality. And now I'm beginning to think that there is a mentality, not unlike the Russian mentality, with the Republican Party now. Now, how do they get there? That's what I want to know, because they've always had distrust for immigrants. They've always had a distrust of Democrats, but not to the degree that they're willing to kill us. And I want to know what was the meteor? What was the match? What did Trump do, whether by design or by chance? How did he tap into that mentality and make it acceptable to hate people because of their color and publicly? I mean, maybe I don't know.
I think my opinion on that, Brian. Hate is such a fluent message.
Well, I'd like to, if you could just address. You had a wonderful post today, Paul, and I'm not patronizing you. It was a great post. Perhaps you could, go a little more detail about that.
Okay, I've always felt that hate is very fluent. It's a visceral emotion. Therefore, it spreads quickly. Its effect is immediate. It is very powerful. Whereas love requires some degree of understanding, because it's understanding and knowledge that creates, in my opinion, compassion. Of course, it comes from the heart, but for the most part, in order to understand someone who is different from us, we're going to have to learn a few things. So it involves knowledge. That takes a little bit of effort. But what's immediate? What's visceral? It's hate. And his whole platform was hate. If you listen to any of his speeches, and this is how he wiped out his Republican contenders in the
Right.
primary when his first go. He just tore everybody down. Remember the Jeb Bush and all the
Right.
nicknames he had for everybody. I mean,
Low
it's very
energy
effective.
Jeb.
He has mastered the art of hatred, and he taps into some kind of inarticulate outrage on the part of his supporters, because a lot of Americans aren't doing well in some way. They have this fantasy. What's the word? Remember, sort of this nostalgia for the American 1950s America. They think that was the ideal.
Yeah, it had a very romantic view of our recent past.
Where America was dominant in the world, all subgroups, that weren't part of the white middle class were subordinated. I mean, that is their. Oh, my cat's falling all over the keyboard. I gotta move him.
Perhaps you should show everybody your cat. It's a beautiful cat. Don't.
Yeah, he'll get his turns. But anyway,
Okay.
So where was I? So yeah, I mean, it was a very antiseptic. I mean, if there's a decade, Brian, that you and I idealize. I mean, we grew up in the 70s, but I would say it was the 60s. Wouldn't you agree?
Right. I think you had mentioned years ago on the Reality Report, if you had to choose a decade, you would choose the 60s in our lifetime, because it wasn't the Earth wasn't that polluted at that moment that you couldn't find some pristine
It was
area,
dynamic,
and it was still modern enough that you could enjoy the conveniences.
Healthcare
appliances.
was still adequate, where we wouldn't be missing out on too much. But for them, it's the 1950s. That stale, antiseptic 1950s, which led to the Leave It to Beaver. Is that 50s?
Yes. Well, I know it was late. It probably continued into the early 60s, but yes, late 50s.
And and that's not realistic. I mean, I guess Trump plays to that with the revivification of, the evangelical leanings. Okay, and Trump's a better representative of the seven deadly sins than he is of Christianity. Let's face it. But somehow he became this supporter of Christian values. Yeah, right. What Christian value does he? What Christian value does he espouse, really,
Right.
or exemplify? Come on, I want to hear one. So.
And by the way, that also
What were we talking
invites the idea of, like, what are Christian values to these people?
Exclusivity, dominance of the white race. I mean, they're
Mhm.
horrified. They're horrified with the thought that we're browning. We're in the process of browning. Whereas, many of us celebrate that. Yeah, let's have some diversity. Let's recognize what others have brought to this great melting pot, which is America. This hatred for immigration. Although we have to admit, Brian, the conservative parties in Europe are also fueled by anti-immigration. So that's not
Yes.
purely.
Their immigration is a south to north immigration, also just different people, but they still see them as a threat. In fact, it's probably even worse there, because there is
Right.
a disconnect with religion. So there you have another problem.
And also, they don't have the natural borders we have.
Right. That's a great point. Absolutely.
So this anti-immigration, anti-diversity, gender rigidity, general rigidity, they know that they've lost ground. Hey, Dave, lost ground economically.
Hey.
They know that, and they're outraged. And so here's Trump tapping in with this hatred, this message of hatred. It's a perfect fit. Anyway, Dave, nice to see you.
Hey, Paul, haven't seen you for a while. How are things going? As
Uh,
if that needs an answer.
Trying to recover.
Right.
I don't
So-
know about you. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Paul.
I was going to say, Dave, Brian and I are kind of like vocalizing just what the damage means to us personally. Do you have anything to add? How are you most damaged
yeah.
by what happened last
How am I
night?
most damaged? Well, that would be my grandchildren. This is not an America that I want for my grandchildren. and but it is an America that Americans want. Obviously, I mean, we could sit here, obviously today, we're bemoaning, and feeling sorry and feeling angry and feeling all these things. The bottom line is, this was a free and fair election. Maybe the last one we'll ever have in America, but this one. And based on that, they made a choice. Then, of course, all the prognosticators and predictors and analysts, what went wrong? I don't think anything went wrong with Kamala's campaign. If I were going to blame anybody, and I'm not, it would be Joe Biden, although he did a great thing. I've said it on the air. I've said it to everybody I know. Maybe had he done it earlier, it would have been a different story. But I know that Joe Biden would not have beaten Donald Trump if Kamala couldn't beat him. So that, but that's like saying if I were 7'4", I might be playing in the NBA. I'm not 7'4". It ain't gonna happen. So for my grandchildren, for me personally, you regroup, you start tomorrow. I'm in the perfect place. I can be at the White House every single day protesting if that's what I choose to do. And we have to sit back and wait. And it was shocking here. Obviously, we were with friends, and it was a weird morning to wake up in New Orleans with three. By that point, I just really I didn't care, but three people, one of my wife and two of my best friends, just devastated. It took till tonight, probably for them to get back. And it'll affect all of our lives. Brian and I haven't had this discussion, but we're going to have to discuss what do we do with Divided We Stand.
Right.
I have
In fact, Dave, I wanted to ask you because,
Sure.
Paul, Dave will remember in 2016 when Trump won, that night was around 10 or 10:30. Things started looking not that well. And it was about that time that I'd called Dave. I said, Dave, this is, and he was shocked himself.
Oh, I was.
And,
I mean, that's a whole different story. But
and you just gave up. I gave up. We went to sleep. And then I got up, I think, at 3 a.m. And I had to look, and it said, he had won. And then we look at what happened. I mean, there was euphoria in 2020 with when Biden won.
Correct.
But this, I had that same exact feeling. So I was ruminating. I mean, and Paul, you knew how tired I was last night. I was really tired on that show. I come off the show at around 1:20 or something like that. I lay in bed.
Ryan,
how am I going to get to sleep?
I'm sorry, I never.
So I'm just saying. I was ruminating, and I was imagining. Okay, I was imagining Trump on the tarmac at Air Force One. I said, this is just these images that I have. It penetrates my brain, and I get so angry. It's the same feel of 16, but now there's this idea that he's going to take this all the way. Where back in 16, he was just going to be a shitty president. This is where I think we need to have a discussion. Can he go all the way with this?
Well, I think that's a little early, Brian. And I'll tell you. I mean, first of all, I think everybody has to work through and process their anger. I talked to a friend of mine today, Hosea Huggins. He and I have a project we do together which is similar to what Divided We Stand is, but different. And I was a little snippish with Hosea because he said, well, we got to stop. We got to process. Hosea, process. I know. It's over. We can't relive it. We have to figure out what's next. But I'm the type of person that does that, and sometimes that can lead to trouble. And you don't really think things out. But my thinking right now is everyone, as soon as they get done, whatever it is they need to grieve, and for many, this is like a death. I mean, this is, or a death of a dream, a death of hope, whatever. Then I think those of us who can have arrived a little bit earlier, maybe that we have to have options for them that they can join, and we fight. We have to fight. What else is there to do?
Right.
And we have to fight.
How do we do that? Does the Democratic Party have to change its propaganda? Does it have to change its position?
No, Brian. We have to fight. We can't have the Democratic Party fight for us.
Right.
They've already been beaten. The Democratic Party has been beaten. Okay. And I don't know yet. Maybe Paul, you or Brian know. I haven't really been paying attention today because we're in New Orleans and I did some other things. Has the House been decided yet? The last I knew, it hadn't. Is there any?
I haven't.
Is it Republican?
I haven't
I heard
checked.
it's still up for grabs.
Even if it's even or whatever, I mean,
Right.
trend is against it.
Well,
It was an insipid response. In fact, I want to know, Dave.
sure.
Before you came on, I told Brian there's two people within my uh, extended family who didn't vote, didn't bother to vote, and if they voted, they'd voted for Kamala. And I'm wondering if this was just a nationwide thing. Apparently, the number I heard was 14 million registered Democrats didn't bother to vote here on what I consider the most important election that I can ever recall. And apparently,
Uh,
they didn't deem it important enough to get off their butts and keep
yes,
that family of bedbugs out of the White House.
correct. Um, Now, of course, first of all, I've always felt, and it doesn't matter what I felt. This is, I think that you have the right to vote, but you also have an obligation to vote. Um, the more people that vote, the more it is a true picture of America. Now, if those 14 million registered Democrats had voted, then the second thing would be, where did they live? If they lived in Alabama, it wouldn't have mattered, right? If they lived in any of the seven swing states, it might have mattered. But it's
She
they are
she
they
was
are
running,
to me. I'm sorry, to me, somebody who doesn't
running
vote,
behind
and there
in
was
every county, you know. Yeah.
yeah, the cliche is, well, they can't say anything about it. Well, they're going to say stuff. I mean, you don't give up your right to say just because you didn't vote. I mean, I understand the thinking behind it. Um, So you had to. And again, my social circle is different than Brian's, is different than yours. I don't know of anyone I know who didn't vote. Now, maybe they wouldn't tell me they didn't vote, but
Mhm.
everybody voted. However, a number of them voted for Trump. Um, so I sit there. Brian's been is a teacher. I've been a teacher, and I'm looking at all my students today who voted for Trump, and I'm going like, did I do my job really well, or maybe I didn't?
The bottom
Uh,
line is their side came out stronger than our side. So what was it about Kamala that did not impassion her side?
it
I
it
mean,
did. Paul, I was fortunate. Judy and I were fortunate to be there. At her summation speech at the Ellipse, there was so much excitement. There was so much generated excitement there. It just didn't generate the numbers. The one number that I saw, and I'm not big on numbers because again, that's in the past. If I saw correctly, Latinos 53% for Trump, I believe. So
amazing,
what
amazing.
does that mean? Uh, my friend at breakfast this morning, we tried to analyze that, but I'm just pontificating. I mean, did that cost the election? I really do believe this, and I
I
know
heard
it
about
almost sounds like semantics, but it's not. Donald Trump defeated Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris did nothing. I don't think she did. I don't think she could have done anything more than what she did. If there's two people, like I said, I mentioned Biden, but again, I still give him props for doing what he did. Maybe if he'd done it, and the other person that I blame is Merrick Garland.
Garland, right?
Garland is the only person in America who had the power to stop Donald
Here,
Trump
here.
as a single person. Now he did not, for whatever reason, did not choose to do it. And I don't know. I'd invite him on our show. I'd love. I mean, I could pop down the Justice Department. I can be there in 6 metro stops if he'd like to talk to me about it. Why? And it's not why did you do what you did. Why didn't you do what you didn't do? And I think that's a question for the ages. You're going to hear a lot of words today. Like I say, and in the next few days, I caught a glimpse as I was walking on excuse me, Canal Street. TV was in there, and it was Robert Kennedy Jr. with we're not going to take vaccines away from anybody, but we're going to make sure Americans have the right information. They have the right information now. They have the scientific
Right.
information now. And where I would argue with any person who voted for Donald Trump, I would say that what they did was a vote for themselves, not for the community of America. And what I mean by that is Trump is for himself. We know that. We know that he has no soul, he has no heart, he has nothing that's human, and he's malleable. And he's malleable by the moment. I hope, and Mr. Bezos, I know you're my neighbor, but Mr. Not with his with Amazon. I hope you run afoul of Mr. Trump, because what you did was chicken shit by not endorsing it. Wouldn't have made any difference, but it's just chicken shit. And the only reason you did it was to appease him, and you can't appease someone like Donald Trump. But back to the people. The thing, I guess, Brian, and I don't know if you saw it in Paul today, that really I had a little different. I mean, I'm just disappointed in the outcome. I'm disappointed in the American people. I don't really feel outrage. It didn't shock me. It didn't surprise me. If it was a minor surprise, I really did think Kamala would take, the popular vote. Electoral college
Right.
was just
We
what
both said that.
it was up for grabs, and I stand on that. But I don't know if you saw the meme, and I hate memes. It's with two mugs crossed like this, like a German kind of not a Nazi, but a German, and under it says peace, love, happiness. Sort of like kumbaya. Isn't it great? We can get back to being friends again. Fuck that. You can't. I'm not saying you have to hate him. I'm not saying how are you gonna and oh yeah, it'll be great. Doug Raniere, who we've talked about him, a politician, both Brian and I know, was really pushing the idea of no Trump and Kamala. And on his page today, other people, oh yeah, that's okay, Doug, we can be friends again. Doug, you can't.
In what way? In what way?
How
I mean,
can
the minute
you-
you
I'm
talk
not saying
about
you hate him,
politics,
but I'm not saying this. And so what I'm saying is, I think Americans a lot of times have a false opinion of how good we are. First of all, I've said it before, I'll say it again tonight. Make America great, and I do know something about words. I spent my whole life with words. Make America great says something. It says America was great once, or more than once. And it also says America is not great now. They're the two statements that you make with that. So the first one is, I always ask someone, okay, you want to make America great again, would you please tell me the years that America was great? Because there's never been a year when America was great for everyone.
Right.
And even sometimes it seems great and it's not. Take African Americans. Slavery, that was great for them. Okay, Civil War, they're freed. Reconstruction was great for them. Jim Crow was great for them. And as recently as 2 years ago, revoking in all effect the Civil Rights Voting Act was great for them. And that's just one group. You could do the same thing with women, gays, just about everybody. So I'm not angry at the people that voted with Donald Trump. I'm disappointed. Also, I also do not want to see, and I might even drop people for this one. And these would be our people. This wasn't us. America is better than this. America is not better than Donald Trump. If they were, Donald Trump would not be assuming office on January 20th. America, the majority of Americans who vote are Donald Trump. That's the way I look at it.
So what do you think of this, Brian? Are you upset with Kamala? Do you think she ran a flawed race, or are you pretty much on the Dave side?
I agree with Dave. We were talking about the vice presidential pick. I think that maybe both of you would agree that it wouldn't have mattered. Looking back on this now, it really wouldn't have mattered. The VP pick would not have mattered one bit. Even if she had won Pennsylvania Superior, she still would have lost. And she might have won Pennsylvania, but she might have lost Minnesota. So it didn't matter. It didn't matter. What matters is the candidate, him or herself. And I don't think there was anything she could have done. I think that there is one thing, and I've talked about this.
Okay.
About popular culture, and Paul, with Bowling Green, was known for Ray Brown, who really started popular culture as courses at universities across the country. Every time we go to the store, every time we watch a movie, that is pop culture, and within that, the device that's used to attract the customer to this culture would be marketing. And Trump marketed it in such a way that it was, number one, it was propaganda. And as you said, Paul, it revolved around hate. It was like the Willie Horton ads. And, people keep saying, well, I'm sick of these ads. I'm sick of these. They're ridiculous. And she went the high route, basically. I mean, she did warn about the fact that we could lose our democracy, but it didn't have the impact that the Trump ads did. And I think that goes back to what Dave talks about with Roy Cohn, this idea that you have this massive ignorant people out there, okay?
Right.
And they're easily manipulated. And we've talked about this, Dave, that there's a certain pornographic element to how people react to what they see emotionally on with propaganda, whether it's, what I mean by pornography, there is that almost a different
It's an emotional
world.
right.
It's in an emotional state, and,
Right,
and
emotional,
people
not
leave it.
intellectual
And
response,
the
correct.
same thing with the propaganda. They see these images of, you have 3 Mexicans who brutally beat or this or that a woman, and it just creates anger. And this is again what Goebbels did prior to the invasion of Poland, where they would show in the German movie houses the Polish men doing this to. It never even happened. We know that,
Right.
but it was just as effective as if it did happen. Because remember, what we see isn't the exact reality. It is our brains. So what I'm saying is, I think it's a very, very simple formula, and it's very effective. And I said this to Romney about 4 days ago, and I saw that ad with the 3 Mexican guys, and they're talking about raping a woman. And Kamala, they called her, I forget how they termed it, but it was something to the effect immigration czar or something like that. And they have a bad view of her, and the filters were on with her face. It made it look too detailed, and that hits with, as you say, Paul, with hate, because hate is an extreme emotion.
Well,
and
one of the
I think we have to find a way. I don't want to call it propaganda, but I said this in a post on Divided We Stand. We have to have a way to be effective at marketing that opinion, because not everybody has their bachelor or graduate degree and can discern between what's reality and what's not.
Can I pick up on that? Can I pick up on that for a moment?
Go ahead.
One of the interesting things, and in a way, of course, I wanted to be in Washington for the election. Not that I'm anybody special, but because Jose and I have worked there this election doing things. We got invited, and Judy and I went to hear Kamala. We were invited last night to Howard University. I'm in New Orleans. I can't go. I'm kind of almost grateful I wasn't there. That would have been a funeral wake. Got invited again today to go and hear her concession speech. And that would have been hard. I would have gone because it's part of history, but it would have been tough to listen to that. Now, but down here I've seen some things, and 2 I want to comment on. I understand a little bit, and I'm using Iowa just because I am using Iowa. It could be any Midwestern place. They want to come to New Orleans. Why the hell they want to come to New Orleans? I don't know. Because New Orleans has always been the big sleazy, and that's cool. It's cool at what it is. But walking around the town, I could see if you were from Iowa, there are drunks passed out, nodding out in the middle of the sidewalk, throwing up. Okay, for an urban boy, it's just another day of doing business. But I could see how people do. There's actually outside of it, there's a Haitian hangout right outside of this very luxurious hotel, or nice hotel, I should say luxurious hotel where we're staying. I just went to have dinner by myself because I wanted to do the show, and Judy and friends were going to someplace else. And I walked in, and it's a really good place. It's right near us, but it's more for breakfast and lunch. And I was the only person having dinner. So I go in to go to the bathroom first, right? And I turn the door and go, whoa, whoa. Okay, yo, man, I'm sorry. This black guy comes out all angry and shit. Okay. I'm sorry, I just turned the door. And so he goes out, and suddenly a girl comes in, a young woman, and it's open. I don't know if you guys have been to New Orleans, but how they're all open. They slide the glass back, and so you're looking at the street. And so it's just me, the manager who's a female, one waitress, and the cook. And this girl comes back in, and all of a sudden she goes, "Fuck you, motherfucker, fuck you." And she storms out, and this guy who'd already been in there comes back in. And the next thing I know, she was tough. The manager woman is throwing him out. because the black woman, it could have been any woman, but it happened to be a black woman, was bitching about they didn't allow her to use the restroom. Well, that's pretty much standard in any city now. The restrooms are for patrons. But I guess the guy somehow snuck in, whatever. And I mean, they put on a show. And so they didn't do that because I was the only person in the restaurant. That's how those people would react. Now, Paul, you live where again? What state? I forget.
Ohio.
I know. Would you expect to see that kind of behavior in any small town in Ohio?
It's well, I mean, they do have a strong alcoholic element in these job bereft small towns in Ohio, but it's covered. They send them into treatment centers.
Right.
Correct.
Correct. That's what that yeah. And you're in the health business. I mean, but here, and so my point is not to say that the indigent are bad, not to say anything about it, but what I'm saying is I think what happens when you get to this hate, Trump made these outlandish statements, right? I mean, who the fuck would believe they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs? Well, Vance, the whole thing. And I can swear that I watched every day, and every night there's this group of Haitians. They haven't eaten a dog yet. They haven't eaten a cat yet. I go by them, I talk to them. Now, you can't say, well, one thing proves the other, but it kind of disproves it. And so this hate thing, and Brian, it's going to sound like I'm picking on you, but I'm not. I'm using what you did last night. And for anybody who watched the show last night, it was my bad, mea maximum culpa. I not explained to Brian what I was hoping to accomplish when I was interviewing the Trumpers that I was interviewing. I wanted them to just say what they said to show one final time, because the voting was over. Just, this is what they are. This is what they are. This is who they are. And Brian, being Brian as he is, wanted to take up discussions with two of them. One he believes every conspiracy theory in the world. He believes the Rothschild. I mean, I stayed up with him till 2 a.m. Just fascinating.
Is he a friend of yours, or you just met him?
I met him in the bar.
All right.
I went down the bar to pick people. No, I never run across him before in my life. There was another guy there. It was just he refused to come on camera until they booed you, which I was like that. But
actually, I'll take that as a compliment.
Well, no, I understand that.
Right.
And then Brian, the bartender, she was willing, and she's tough. But basically, what she said, Paul. I mean, I don't know if you watched the show last night, but for anybody who didn't, basically what she said. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I did end up going back and.
Yeah, but basically what she said is completely erroneous. But it probably is one of the maybe the main reason. She said, my mortgage is too high. I pay too much for milk. That rationale, right? Inflation is down, all these things. Now, Brian, what was interesting was you were very quick to be on the attack, right, as you are.
As I do. And right, you do too, by the way. But you didn't do it last night.
I had a different purpose, and I didn't explain it to you. But I'm glad you did that for a way, because I got to listen to what their reaction to you was, right?
It wasn't
and
good.
You were not Brian Weinstein to them.
Right.
You are a Northeast liberal, and
right,
they're Southern, right? And they're Texans, which is a different form of Southerners, the five. And it was like, see, he thinks he knows everything, but he doesn't have his facts right. Yes, he does. You don't have your right, okay? Right. But it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered, okay?
And there's the point. This is what we're dealing with. How do you have a discussion with somebody if we can't even get the facts right?
You don't discuss. You act. Now, that's easy for me to say. I can rule out what we don't do. I'm not going to convince any Trumper of anything, because it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. They are who they are. They've proven who they are. They will be who they were. Now, if you want a light, and there's not much behind this, we're going to really get to see what America is now. Okay. And what I mean by that is it's one thing to say, put them all in the camp. Put them on. And it's another to see people abused. Will you hang on to that? And you know there'll be abuses. And it's another thing to say, I'm friendly with Juan. Why the fuck did they take Juan? Well, they're not going to discriminate. They don't care whether, that's going to be part of it. The second thing is that I thought of this a lot today, or 2 times, which is a lot for me. Okay, I kind of equated it to America when I was young and the Vietnam War in this respect. In 1960, If you had polled the nation about us being in Vietnam, it would have been 90-10. I predict if everybody answered, 90% were in favor, 10% no, or some number like that. But over 15 years, from 1960 to 1975, when we pulled out, it was the majority were opposed. But the incident that I think actually moved the pendulum the most during that time, it was a slow movement, was Kent State.
Yeah.
Kent State. And you guys went
Sister
to
school of Bowling Green.
And, right there. And, that moment, it was hard after that moment to say, wait a minute, they gunned down the kids and I have a kid. It was really hard. So what I'm hoping for very quickly before people have to suffer is some incident like that. Yeah, and I know horribly I'm calling for somebody's death, and it could be mine, I suppose. But the idea of it is, I think it's one thing to support Trump and what he wants until you see it in reality. And again, Paul and Brian, I've been wrong so much about Trump that I don't even hedge my bets.
What I'd like to know is, it seems that the two issues where Trump scored heavily,
Right.
Let's say Kamala were more effective in responding to the issue of inflation, increased food prices in the grocery stores specifically, and immigration, just loose order or whatever. Did she effectively communicate to the rank and file that she was on top of these two issues? Because those two issues were probably really big in getting his people out. Am I correct on that?
You are correct. But you got to remember, she was, I'm just saying, she was at a disadvantage in that people don't know what the vice president does. Right. They don't. I don't know the vice president.
She couldn't go against the president either. She couldn't go against the president's policy, even if.
Right. And she also couldn't speak out against it. So I think that was a disadvantage. I think she was, she tried to distance herself, but it wouldn't have mattered. And
let's just say that again. As you said, it would not have mattered.
Correct.
They're not going to change.
Brian, you've laid out the facts. Like last night, you laid them out. They were they're indisputable. And they disputed them. No, they didn't dispute them. They said you were wrong because you don't do
and I was absolutely
research. How many times? I listened to that all night.
Right.
You've got to do your research. I said, well, okay, that's fine. Where do I go to research this? Well, and then, okay, whatever. And with immigration, it was a losing issue. Okay, let's look why. Number one, Biden gave her the job of kind of overseeing immigration, correct? And there's the Democrats could not solve that. They could not. And the reason that they couldn't, and I kind of laugh about that as I see the Latino vote, they were concerned about the Latino vote. So Democrats, by not coming after immigration, right? And I'm not saying be cruel or cold or anything, but taking a harder stand. How'd that work out for you? Not very well, did it?
Right.
So she was, and then Biden, as we do in DC, words don't mean what they mean anywhere else, guys. Seriously, I live there. So the word czar has no meaning other than you're the boss. Okay. There's a McDonald's
border czar. They called her border czar.
Yeah, but I'm just saying the word czar has no meaning in Washington, D.C. other than boss. There's no Russian connotation, no communist. But out in middle America, czar, right? Not a word that's used. And so, well, she was a czar. She should have done something about it. No. And Biden, it's a shame. The last piece of his greatness was she had to win. And she didn't. But she didn't lose. I'm going to keep saying Trump won. We have to deal with that. There are more Americans who voted who feel that Donald Trump, and they feel that Donald Trump will be a better president than Kamala Harris. I don't. Paul, you don't. Brian, I don't think you do.
What was the great appeal that Trump had for the Latino voters? I'd like to know. I have some ideas, but I'd like to know what you guys think.
Well, I'll share my ideas if we both agree they're just ideas. Here's some of what we talked about this morning, okay? And I'm just throwing them out because it's not processed yet, okay? Let's start with one obvious one. What is the party? What's the party of abortion? What is the pro-abortion party?
Well, I know what the anti one is, the Catholics, and they're heavily Catholic.
Well, no, I'm saying who is the pro-abortion party in America?
Well, we know that, Dave. It's not
Okay,
worth
tell me.
repeating. Democrats.
Right. Okay, so if you're anti-abortion and you believe abortion's a sin because you're a Catholic and the Pope told you so, or because, remember, you know, very patriarchal society, most Hispanic Latino families. So suddenly you have that's where your inclination is to go there, especially if it's one issue. So there's some of that. Secondly,
I agree with you on
uh,
that. I think that I arrived at that as well. Yeah, that was what I
second,
thought.
yeah.
Based
Secondly,
on-
and now I'm not putting these in any order, just run them. So secondly, I don't pay much attention to Florida because Florida is whackwood, but we know that the Cubans have long supported the Republicans.
Mhm.
Right.
They are, and what they've done is because they equate the Democrats with communism, or well, they equate it with, Kennedy didn't like, and Castro, whatever, right? Anti-Castro feelings, which, so you already had this base of Cubans, and then the Mexicans never really moved that much to Florida. They kind of hit the middle of the country, right? And I mean, they were there in Florida, don't get me wrong, but you had a lot of the Hondurans and El Salvadorians and the Dominicans who were fleeing their country because of war and because of communism type or government disagreements. And the Republican Party did a brilliant job down there of labeling the Democrat Party in America the same as the one you escaped from. You don't want to go back to that, right? Well, okay. You've also got, as I said, a very patriarchal society, and many of the women, if they're man, just like Southern society, a lot of them, if they're man, they don't feel, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to vote. How do I vote, Poppy? You vote Republican. Okay? Poppy wouldn't steer, So, and then the other factor, I think there are some, and I'll kind of use this, Brian, if you can kind of understand what happened in Bridgeton. Okay, so for years, white government dominated Bridgeton, even though it was growing to be a black city. And so Doug Ranier's brother, Donald, that was the biggest upset in history when he became mayor. But Donald started out as a card-carrying Republican. So why did he change? Because there was no opportunity for him to grow in that party. Like every level was already taken. Now, I'm not saying he was an opportunist, and other things changed his mind. And I think there are some Hispanics who feel that the opportunity is not there in the Democratic Party for them to rise. That's a small thing. But then the last thing, and I'd be interested in both of your reactions to this, because this is kind of a whack theory, but I want to try it. When I was working as a consultant, educational consultant in Washington, D.C., one of the schools that I worked at, in fact, it was my base. I was out nationally, but I liked that they put us based in schools so we didn't lose reality. I was in Dunbar, which is an all-black high school, and there was an interesting phenomena going on there. The older teachers were very supportive of the young black students. You know what I mean? Like nurturing. Like you would say, they come out through the civil rights, but a lot of the younger black teachers didn't. And I just kind of kept my ear to the ground and learning. And basically what it came down to, a lot of those younger black teachers thought these hoodlum kids were reflecting poorly on them and keeping them down, right? And I think there's some of that in the Latino Spanish community, that these immigrants are hurting me. So there's some reasons, whether there's truth to that. I'm not an expert. Paul, what were some of the ones you came up with?
Well,
I need to go close the door because my wild family came back. Close.
No, I mean, that pretty much matches my view. I saw it as very family-oriented, family value-oriented, and Catholic and anti-abortion. There's also a love of the strongman type of leader.
Yes.
We saw this with, especially that guy down in El Salvador who's cleaned up everything. That right winger that run. I forgot his name offhand, but he is all the rage in Latin America. He sent his lieutenants to Jamaica and Haiti and other places to try and educate on his very harsh methods of getting crime down, and which also involves obviously taking away people's rights. And his they also Trump's desire to toss out the limitations on staying in power. That also appeals to the Latino mind because again, these strongmen in Latin America
Hmm.
also like to take away term limits and things like that. So maybe there's some of that in there too. But I don't want to sit there and you know categorize people so much. But I think probably the first one, Dave and Brian, is the most accurate. The one on family values and anti-abortion and Catholic values and so on. That's probably explains it. And I
Well, Brian, we're
underestimated.
gonna. Oh, go ahead.
I
Sorry,
mean,
Paul.
I certainly underestimated it, and now we're paying. We're paying the piper now for this. I mean,
Now, Paul, I have to ask you a question. I'm going to ask both of you questions. And did you really expect Kamala to win? Yes or no? Simple yes or no. No, and I'll do the same. But
yes,
if you want me to, you did
Yes.
yes,
expect her to win.
Yes.
Brian, you expected also.
Yes.
So I'm the one person, not that I'm better or predicting. I just said too close to call, so I hedged my bets. So I didn't say she would lose. I did say, and everybody on this, everybody who's my Facebook pages or my other political pages know that I said flat out Kamala would win the popular vote, and I was dead wrong on that. So it's not, it's not that. It's what I
turnout. It's
did.
got to be
What I
turnout.
go ahead.
Has to be because of poor turnout. I mean, what else can we attribute it toward? I mean, I don't know. I'm a neophyte when it comes to political understanding, but
Right.
I just think he brought his people out, and she didn't manage to match him on this. And
Well, and you certainly could. If you look again, if you break the statistics down, I'm not going to do that. But it certainly did seem that she underperformed Biden in some areas. Okay, and Trump overperformed himself in some. But I also
right,
think, Brian, you and I've talked about this because your state. When I say your state, your second state is Ohio, and Paul, you lived there, right? And I, I
my
don't.
second station, New Jersey. I lived there for 4 years.
Right. He did live in Willingboro. He went to Willingboro High for a year.
No, no, I remember that. But
For a few
we're
years.
not calling you a Jersey boy, though. You're an Ohio boy, Paul. But what happens is that
I'm
state, Brian
Jamaican.
kept
I come
saying
from
it, and
Jamaica.
I didn't disagree with him, but I didn't think so. Brian said, that is a red state. That is a red state. And I kept thinking, but he's right. Brian was right. Okay. That, if
Ohio
you,
Well, you
the
should,
biggest,
Paul, could you mention to Dave with what happened with Nancy Captor? I mean, who she
Yeah,
is?
so Hockey Captor, for much of my adult life, has been our Democratic representative from Lucas County, and she wins by 1,000 votes. That's it. That's turnover, Dave. That's not being upset at Marcy Captor. That is piss poor turnout. Sorry.
right.
Um,
Well,
I think the Democrat Party was plagued by this across the country. Boy, are we
could
going to pay
be.
for it now.
Well,
Oh,
let's look at it this way. It's interesting. I think for the three of us, we would agree on this. That democracy is worth saving, as flawed as it is. Okay, and the people who voted for Trump don't share that feeling. They don't.
Right.
They can't. You can't vote for Trump.
Which brings up
And
what Veg says here. That's a thing we're going to have to answer.
well, yes, and you know what? Anything that anybody speculates today could happen. I mean, how do you say no? He's already said, "My beautiful Christians," exact words. "My beautiful," as if he owns the Christians. Hey, doofus president, and my name's Dave Price. If you need to write it down, they're not your beautiful Christians. If they're anybody, they're God's beautiful Christians. Okay, maybe God could say that if there were a God. But my beautiful, what does that mean? Well, in Trump's world, you don't know, and that's the other thing that I find with his. I woo the weave, and the weave is you fucking idiot. Okay, but people actually think that goddamn weave is brilliant. It's an old man who was never smart, whose mental facilities have diminished, who people who know medicine have sworn that he demonstrates that he's had strokes by the physical what he can't do and what he does do, on top of dementia, on top of age. So No, it's not the weave. I'd love to know, and this is weird. This is the kind of weirdness I like. I want to know, because Trump is not smart enough to come up with it on his own. I want to know who told him. Was it Stephen Miller? Was it Steve Bannon upon release from prison? But he said it earlier. Who told him to talk about the weave? He's not smart enough to come up with that on his own. But it was brilliant. I mean, there were people saying, listen to him. That's right. He can jump in this. Hannibal Lecter. What does he have to do? And he said, that's brilliant. Hannibal Lecter, dogs and cats. And yet it didn't matter. And I really, again, I don't think this time it was hating a woman as much. I don't think it was hating a black or an Asian Indian as much as it was, we want Trump. And when people say, I want to repeat it again, because I really want to drive this home in the next 4 years. I don't want to hear anyone out there say, we're better than this, because we're not. America as a whole is not. If we were, Donald Trump would not assume the presidency in January. That's all. I mean, so, he beat her. He beat her fair and square. It was probably even a fairer election in 2020, which is one of the fairest in history. And there you are. Now, and Brian, when I first came on, you said, and I think this is a question, and I think we all have to come up with this. What do we do next? What do we do next as an individual? And what do we do next as a collective body? And what is effective? And what will be effective?
Well, I think that leads to what I was saying. I don't like using the word propaganda as a marketing tool, but I do think you have to understand the demographics and how the viewer accepts or doesn't accept the information. I mean, if you're going to talk at a college or collegiate level to somebody who is based in emotion, you're wasting your money. And I think the first thing you have to do,
Brian, remember that next time you try to, and I'm just laughing because we all do this. You did that last night, and I'm not saying
right. Well, I literally thought. Well, first of all, I was angry with the first guy, but I thought that he tried to come off as intelligent. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the show, we had a guy from Texas who started talking about the Federal Reserve, and every single fact, so to speak, that he gave was actually incorrect.
But you just said yourself, you can't talk to people like that on an intellectual level. And I'm agreeing with you.
Well, I thought that because he tried to be, it was a pseudo-intellectual delivery that gave me the right to
you had
take
the
that
right.
as
I'm just saying, did you accomplish anything last night? And did he accomplish anything last night? And the answer is no, because he did not believe a word you were saying.
But he didn't get a free pass at what he had to say. I know that. He had to pay the price.
No, he didn't.
I think he did.
He paid the price. His candidate won. He paid a big price.
No, I get that. But on that particular moment, he paid the price. It's not much. But you know me, Dave. And Paul, you know me, because we lived together in college. I can't let something like go.
With you guys? Did JD Vance room with you guys too?
I'll be frank with you. Paul doesn't know this person, but I had a friend named Randy Vance who played on the football team. He actually played at Iowa for a year as a freshman. Then he transferred to Bowling Green, and I looked him up on Facebook. Randy's not related to JD, but that's the first thing I think. Oh my God, is that Randy's son? So there is some connection. As far as I know, no, there's no connection. But I know I'm going to go too tangent, but with Ohio, you have such a strange state.
And understand, Brian, I'm not attacking you, and you were being Brian, but you raised such a valid point, which is you can't use an intellectual argument with somebody who doesn't have the brain power and the intellectual acumen to understand it. However, that's what we should be doing. Do you know what I mean? We should be putting the passion aside and saying, okay, this is the truth. So it's hard not to do what you did last night. Very difficult. And I don't know, nothing you did was wrong. It was just funny, their reaction. And I mean, they just dismissed you as you were the ignorant one, not you personally. Right. The person who would quote statistics. Wait a minute. And you're quoting the Rothschilds?
Well, that's another thing too. That's I
Oh,
mean,
you should.
getting sick of that crap.
It got great around 1 a.m. as we started going through all the conspiracies and all the things that they were going to teach me. And I just sat there and loved it because what else? I'm just laughing. I mean, God, that's why maybe this morning I wasn't so upset because I said they were too dumb to vote.
Can we steer this towards what we think we're going to be facing in the next 4 years? What do you think?
Okay.
Besides the Supreme Court being stacked, or maybe you can include that. What are we facing? What do you think are the most immediate effects?
We will. Okay.
We will that we're seeing.
Yeah.
I want to hear from you guys on this.
Okay, I'll go first, just real quickly. I think we're going to know very quickly how bad it's going to be by the very first things Trump chooses. He, as recently as last night, called the press the enemy of the people. If he just continues that verbiage, that's fine. But if he refuses press passes for any newspaper that didn't endorse him, that'll be one thing. If he started putting reporters in, arresting them for certain things, if he comes after Joe Biden as a first act, then all bets are off. But
I mean, as citizens, what are we going to face? I don't care about the interpolitics. What are we going to face as citizens?
Well, Paul, well, you're going to have. Okay, I'll tell you what you're going to face. Are you going to accept a reporter doing his job and being arrested? Is that okay with you?
Well, I don't watch TV and I don't watch the reporting and all that. I'm just a simple guy.
You answered that question. I got it. What about if they take 35 or 40?
Going up.
Listen to me.
Stop.
You asked. I'm going to tell you. What if they took 35 or 50 Hispanics from your town and put them in a camp? And the reports were that they weren't getting any medicine, they weren't getting right food. Would that bother you?
Why are you asking me such a question, Dave? I mean, just tell me what you think they'd be doing.
No, I'm not. What I'm telling you, I'm telling you, Paul, is this: you don't know what's going to happen, so we have to prepare ourselves. At what point
what do you fear most, going to? What do you fear is going to happen?
I fear that Donald Trump will continue breathing.
Okay,
that's what I fear most.
The guy's going to slap a 10% tariff.
That's what I'm worried about, the tariffs.
He's going to.
Over human beings? You're no better than the Republicans then.
He threatened to deport farm workers. Okay? What do you think that's going to do with farm prices? Now, maybe you're already rich, Dave, but that bothers me. Okay? I'm going to fix income.
I'm not saying it shouldn't. Okay? That's fine. I'll agree with that. And that's just,
so inflation to me.
You're going to do that. Okay. What are you going to do, Paul? What are you going to do?
No, I'm saying this is what I fear. I'm not saying what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Paul, listen to me. I respect you a lot. But I'm at a point now where I'm not interested with what anybody fears. I'm interested about what are you going to do if what you fear happens? Not just you, me, Brian, everybody.
I'm panicking right now. That's what I'm doing.
That's a good, honest answer, okay? I got that.
Panicking.
Paul, I'm pushing you as I push Brian.
But that's the reality of it. He accused her of sleeping on the job on the issue of inflation. Well, he's going to stoke it. He's going to stoke it. He's going to spend.
Of course he is.
He's going to spend like crazy, like he did. He was the one that started the inflation with the TARPS Act, okay? The free handouts to the government. We're going to see inflation like crazy, which means interest rates are going to stay high. Interest rates are going to stay high. We're going to suffer like crazy. Us Social Security guys that are living on Social Security pensions, it's going to be awful. I'm going to see
you're not getting any argument from me. What I'm saying is he's going to do it. I'm agreeing with you. Your fear is going to become a reality.
I think so too. So
and the thing is, you and all of us better start thinking about
what else you guys think is, I mean, because this is a disaster. I see this as a disaster, okay?
Why is.
Why do you see it as a disaster? Tell me, why do you see this as a disaster?
Why is this a disaster? Because, as I said, as far as I can see, it's a complete paradigm shift on how a government does business. We've never had this. And as Veg is saying, we may not even have elections. Remember what he said, and we've got to pay attention to him. He said it's going to be a very, very difficult first day. It's going to be a bad first day. Now, what does that mean? I don't know.
It means he was. No, it means.
Is he going to go after?
It was his
Adam Schiff and
right.
put him in prison?
No,
Gulag him?
no, Brian. What it meant was a way to diffuse the people. What he said, I'm only going to be what he was trying
A
to
dictator
get
one
across.
day, for one day.
I'm going to be no. He's going to be a dictator for every day he's in office until he dies or leaves. That's it. So what do you do with dictators? You know, do we look? I mean, I'm asking. Do we look at Nazi Germany?
Well, I'm not
What
calling
they
for
did?
assassination if you're going there. I wouldn't do that. But
I didn't-
no, I know. I'm not just saying because that's usually the route that people do
Well,
go.
here's the problem with assassination. Forget that it's not good and you're on the wrong side.
Right.
Guess who becomes president if he's assassinated?
Right.
Well, that's
J.D. Vance, who may be
Right.
worse than Trump. Maybe.
Exactly.
So, you know, I'm not hollering at you guys. I'm just hollering at everybody else when they see this. The idea of it is the time now is to sit down and do exactly what Paul was calling for. First of all, if you're one person who needs to make a list, do it. Make a list of your fears. Okay, do it. I think that's great. It helps you focus. You know, add some from some others. Do some reading. One of the things I'm going to be doing is picking now journalists that I think everybody should read, not on media, but you know, are writing independently, who are telling the truth. Look at what they're saying, but you got to be prepared. And what I mean by that is you got to start thinking. And I know it's easy to say, you know, I'm going to do this. But you need, you know, it's how do I say this? It's like you can't go into, and we're in a battle. Okay, I don't like to use those terms, but this is a battle. And you don't go into battle.
Is it a political battle anymore in the sense of the traditional route of trying to use politics
No,
to push your
this
agenda?
is democracy. This is democracy versus dictatorship. And right now we have a democracy, and on January we're going to get a dictatorship. And then we're back to Paul's. I think it's a very good question Paul asked, and I think we should all be asking that of ourselves. What can I do? What should I do? What should I contribute money to? What organization should I contribute money to that's going to continue the fight in such a way that I want to? What organizations can I join that, you know, I can help, whether it's phones, you know, because this is not, the campaign's over. We lost. So now we have a campaign to save democracy.
Do you see
That's what we have.
any little small iota of good that can come from his out of control?
You want an outlandish one?
I'll take
give you an
anything.
Okay, I'll give you an outlandish one. And it's something that his people used against Biden. It's wrong, man, but we don't have to really worry about war with Russia because he'll give Putin his own way. We don't really have to worry about a war with North Korea. I mean, that's not really a concern anyway because he and Rocket Man will get along. And the place that we do have to worry, I think, but it'd be worked out in some way. Maybe he can appease China by giving them Taiwan, which he will. NATO is done, okay, on day one. Or not, NATO's not done. NATO's, you know, I mean, so, but if you really want to answer, well, maybe we won't get nuclear war.
I agree with you on the Ukraine thing. I think he'd be a big spur to force Zelensky into making land concessions for an agreement, and Putin, who is in an unwinnable war, will agree to get his little
victory. And you know what scares me? Well, I think you're, you know, on this. What scares me there is what if Putin is sort of Trump-like in that that's just not enough? You know, I mean, you know, if he said no, I want all of the Ukraine. We don't know that, right? Would Trump give him all the Ukraine? My answer is I think he might.
Well, if Putin knew that Trump would allow him to get all Ukraine, he would take it.
Well,
I mean, Brian, do you think that Putin would agree to ceasefire with, as long as he gets to keep Crimea and some other pieces?
Yes, I think he would.
I think he would too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a war that's not working well.
But he would take as much as he can. But yeah, he may not want.
I just thought of something, and it's an answer to a question you asked. It's a very good question, and I didn't think of this. Are you aware of this? And I wasn't until the other day when Jay here ran across it. Trump has been talking about different people who put, who's going to put in. We know Kennedy's going to have a role. We know Musk is going to have a role. Bannon is going to come back and have a role. We already know that Miller has a role. Vance obviously has a role. And I didn't believe this when Jay told me. I said, you're full of shit. Jay said, here's the article. Trump wants to put somebody he feels would be the best in charge of missiles. Now, what the hell does that mean? We don't even, what's that? The missiles are? Do you know who he wanted to put in there? Did either of you see that?
I can only
Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker is going to be the missiles czar. Now, I'm not making that shit up.
Herschel Walker for the first down.
Out of Trump's mouth. Now,
Herschel Walker
could outrun me, could outpunch me, could do all that stuff. But however, it would be could you imagine an intellectual off between Marjorie Taylor Greene, Herschel Walker, and Tommy Tuberville? You would have to declare triple losers. But that gets to Trump's mindset. I mean, he said, I was just joking, baby. No, he was serious. Okay? Because he owes Herschel. He owes Herschel. He loves Herschel.
The line or not.
And do you know why he loves Herschel? Because Herschel was the running back on
New Jersey Generals
USFL team on the New York Generals when Trump
had that.
When
team,
Trump took another whole leg and went bottom up, but Herschel defended in them, and he used Herschel. So, does that and Val, back to your thing? If something ridiculous like that, you know what's going to happen? People say that's great, Herschel, black man. See you liberals, you didn't put a black man in charge of the missiles, huh? You know that's what they're going to say. So, while I'm laughing tonight, it's a gallows humor. Okay, we're in serious, and both of you guys are demonstrating it. We're in serious, deep doo-doo. We really are. But we're going to have, and then what the other thing is, taking that analogy a step further, if we're in quicksand, the question becomes, do you move in the quicksand, or do you wait, or do you hope for the rope? I mean, that's kind of where we are. And I really feel sorry, Brian, tonight for people like your wife, Ronnie, who is one of the most empathetic, sympathetic people on the planet. And I imagine I got phone calls from some of my friends who are Ronnie-like, and they just don't, they're just not stunned, like, they don't play the political games that we play. They're just, my God, what has happened?
Right, well,
the one thing
Ronnie,
we can't do
like anybody else, but she wants it fair, and she demands it's fair, and this is not fair, and that's, you have great expectations, and they're not coming through.
But I know. I mean, and I'm not. I really didn't want Trump to win. But Paul, I don't know if Brian told you this, or if you knew this. After I heard her speak, the ellipse, she would have been a phenomenal president. Ladies and gentlemen, even though you can make the argument Hillary Clinton was the most prepared.
Well, she's now a nobody.
To be president.
I mean, that's her done. She's now a nobody. That's her done. Unfortunately, that's the way the political system works here in this.
Yeah, I agree. She's done.
Right. But I mean, it's worse for me if I just thought, okay, she wouldn't. No, she would have been at any other time, at this time. So now I've got the double thing on me. I don't want Trump because he's going to destroy the country, and I really want her because she's good.
Let me ask you guys, because you guys know more about this stuff than I do. How many Supreme Court justices are likely to be replaced this term, and what will it mean? How is this going to affect us right away? Okay. What kind of decisions are they likely to make?
Dave, you'll have to answer that one.
I'll take that one. Okay, at this point, let me start this way, okay? At this point, and I go out in the world and say this, there are 3 Supreme Court justices who should not be sitting there. No question. Clarence Thomas is a crook. Sam Alito has already said one side is going to win, and he knows which side that's his side. You can't say that as a Supreme Court judge. And Judge Kavanaugh, this is not conjecture. Trump had the FBI stop investigating. They had over 1,000 complaints about Kavanaugh, and they gave a few of them a cursory. So they shouldn't be there, but they are. So that's okay. Now, Alito and Thomas are old, in their 70s. They're not going to give up easily, but Trump doesn't have any allegiance to them. Could he say could he say to Elon Musk, Elon, come here, give Clarence $65 million and he'll retire. I might retire for 65 million.
Especially
So
who the man is, he
I
will
think
accept that.
Alito and Thomas, it would not surprise me if Trump lasts 4 years that he will replace those two. And I will say with 100% certainty, as bad as Clarence Thomas is, and as bad as Samuel Alito is, and they are among the worst judges ever to sit on the Supreme Court, Trump's next two appointments will be worse. They'll be worse in two ways. They will be physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally worse, and they'll be young. They'll
Eileen
be 40
Cannon,
or
perhaps.
45.
Yeah, he'd be replacing two old tires with two new tires. Yeah,
exactly. So that's one thing. Now, on the Democratic side, one of the three is 74 years old. Now, she will do what Ruth Bader Ginsburg did, I'm sure at this point, try to hold on, at this point, even if she, because one of the things that happens, it's interesting. Being in politics and Supreme Court or politics, let's not kid ourselves, in DC, you could be dead for 3 days and you could still be in power because, literally, there's people they can't even face. So she could do that. But so there's a chance that Trump, even in his 4 years, would have a chance to replace 3 of the judges, which would then make the court conservative for the next 4 decades. That's it.
Which means we'll be dead.
And at best,
that's a long time. How is that possible?
Yeah, but my grandchildren won't. I'm sorry, what?
How is that possible? Wow,
I missed that,
that's a
Paul.
long time.
Well, if you're talking about generation being 20, I think what he's saying is, if a generation is 20 years, then they'll be able to.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I meant 4. I misspoke. No, I meant 4 decades is what I meant. I didn't mean 4.
Okay.
I said 4 generations, and that was wrong. I meant 4 decades. So I did say the wrong term. It would not.
It is
not before. But you know what? What about this? And we haven't talked about this. And again, it's Trump keeps making me appear to be naive, and I hate that. But anyway, I really kind of think of the Trump movement as being rich people who think they can benefit from him, Republicans who don't have a conscience, those who have did not, and really, really ignorant people who feel that Trump is sent from God or whatever. But there's a group out there that, and this is one statistic I will be interested in seeing, a group of young, educated white males. And my son and I, son's, that's what he deals with, young white students, graduate students at Alabama, University of Chicago, University of Australia, and overseas. He's at Tokyo as we speak, conference there. But what happens is, so we're talking about, I said, really, Michael, I always thought maybe when the old, Paul, I'm older than you and I'm older than Brian. I kind of always thought now the baby boomers are disappointments to me. When they die off, the new generation, right, will take over and they'll be more liberal, they'll be this, they'll be that. Well, that seems to be true, but with women, not men. Because Michael said, a lot of these highly educated feel that their career has already been stunted because their positions will go to a foreigner or to a woman or to a person of color, and they're angry, just like the workers who feel betrayed are angry. Well, that doesn't bode real well, right? Because I was kind of hoping, so I don't see MAGA, I see it evolving and emerging. I don't see it dying. I see it being replenished. If that doesn't change, it'll be replenished. I've said before and I say it again. Fortunately, in DC, we get to go to these think tanks. Heritage may be horrible, but they ain't dumb. Cato may be naively libertarian, but they ain't dumb. No. And AEI, they might be old-time conservatives and rich, but they ain't dumb. Yeah. Right. There are probably, give or take, 50 GOP think tanks in DC. Same number with Democrats. And Brian, to your question before, and we've had this, I was thinking of this too, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, Paul and Brian, on this. One of the things I've always held is it's hard to unify Democrats because we're kind of the party that accepts all kinds of people, right? Minorities, women. All you have to appeal to really honestly is to white men in the Republican stuff comes along. So it's much easier to be unified. It really is for the Republicans. And that's the same thing with their message, right? Well, you can't say that because that'll offend the trans, and that's good. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just bad for delivering the message, right? You didn't see any pro-trans messages coming out of the Republicans. You didn't see any pro-abortion coming out from the Republicans. And again, I would speak to every woman who lives. I feel sorry that we couldn't get back your right to determine what happens with your body. And I'm, and to Black Americans, if the statistics I saw tonight are right.
Now that they have full control, maybe they'll take it back from the states and have a national abortion ban. How do you like that?
Paul,
I mean, now that they have full power.
I'm going to go a step further. I'm going to say that in this, that will be introduced in the 2 weeks of the new that bill.
Probably.
That now it'll see. Will Trump come out with what he said? He said, I think it should be, and there are people who believe that. I think it should be in the hands of the state. Well, tell that to the 3 women or 4 women in Texas who died. Tell that to the 2 women in Georgia who died. Tell that to the surviving women somewhere else that were able to get the medical care they need. So, Paul, you're saying, what are you afraid of? What are your concerns? That's coming. I mean, I just give it. Question is, will Trump? He will.
You're breaking
even
up,
though he says he doesn't.
Dave, you're starting to break up a little bit here.
And Brian, okay, I'll end it then, and you guys can continue if I'm breaking up because the Wi-Fi here is terrible. But the other thing, I guess I'll end with this. My comments is this: I don't want to be but that is really good question. What do you fear? What will happen? Looking in, my basic fear is this: Donald Trump is redeeming human features that we know of, like empathy, compassion. Donald Trump is vengeful. Donald Trump is so vengeful that you could give him $1 million on Monday, and if he wanted $1 on Tuesday and you didn't give it to him, you become mortal enemy. A person like, as long as he is breathing, is dangerous. But a person like that, as long as he is breathing and he's in the White House as the most powerful man in the world, is danger times infinity.
All right, Dave, appreciate that.
And you guys should continue.
Well,
it's really a discussion. But
to dementia, if he's not already suffering from it. And one wonders if, the Republican advisor will try running the country while he's rendered incapable. But the problem is that he's a lot more imperious personally than Biden ever was. So he's going to relinquish power, any degree of power and control over his dead body, right?
Paul, would you quit asking great questions, okay? I'm trying to get out of this. That was a great so if you can hear me and retrieve, here's what you got. There is a theory, and it's not preposterous, that Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and J.D. Vance got together and led for Vance to be the vice president. Vance is in Thiel's pocket, and he's in Musk's pocket. Notice it wasn't until Vance came in that you began to see Musk move to the president. Look at the timing. And also Beavis and Butthead, Trump's 2 idiot children, were involved. Now, who knows what they want? Maybe they want daddy's money. There is a belief, you want your conspiracy theory? That they will get the 25th Amendment and President Vance.
So you broke up there. The 25th.
Well, basically, what he was saying is that he thinks the Republican Party will turn on Trump eventually and use the 25th Amendment to put Vance in because he's younger, maybe might be more effective in the long run. I disagree with that. I think that
I'm
Trump
very
still has a
curious from a
strong.
personal standpoint. He's gonna fight this stuff. He's not gonna agree to anything.
Right, the man doesn't sleep,
I
and
mean,
that's
Biden gave way, but I don't see Trump doing it.
no, I don't either. But I mean, again, I mean, there's a possibility of that. I think it just doesn't matter at this point because, as I said, there's a paradigm shift, which means the shift is really the Republican Party, and I don't know, which affects which, but you have the constituents, they're dangerous. You have the party leaders, they're dangerous. It's just a bad cocktail, and I think what Dave was saying is that we didn't do anything wrong. The only thing perhaps what you were talking about, Paul, is we didn't get the turnout, but maybe that's just what it is. We have only a certain number of people within the party who are capable of showing up for a vote.
Well, I guess
I think they did everything they could do to try to get. My
I'm
wife
being
was sending out postcards to
I'm
people in
being
Kansas.
harder and Kamala than you two guys are. I think you guys can't see too much fault, but to me, the passion was, I don't know. You see, I don't watch media, so maybe that's because I've got some.
Well, she certainly, Paul, she did have a lot of heavy hitters when she accepted the nomination. I think that was smart. It had a lot of energy, but that didn't translate into, as you say, getting people to come out to vote. Because if
I
she,
remember this. I remember the vagueness of this Twitter I read. And X is very conservative. Okay, it's dominated by the
right,
conservative. And they said something about look at this all-star lineup supporting Trump, and they had Vivek and Musk and all-star to them, of course, right? And it just listed this whole long list, and then it said, and let's look at Kamala's list, and it was the followers of P Diddy. I mean, that was the view. It's very racist,
right.
but it worked on their side. But
And that's what my point I make, Paul, is that the
can't
propaganda
forgive
machine does
our
work.
side for not showing up. I can't do it. I'm bitter about it.
Well, I don't know what we do. I do know this, and I mentioned this last night. And they didn't like it, but I said maybe they didn't hear it, but I said that I think the exact number 71% of all the GDP in the United States is created within blue
State,
counties.
Yeah. Well, cities.
Cities,
basically.
right. So it says a lot. It's kind of like just in society in general, Paul, I think you would agree with me that it's the people who make inventions, the people who are way ahead of their game, like the Newtons of the world and the Einsteins. They're the ones, they're the train pulling the rest of us. And the people in the Republican Party, they're like the caboose. So they have like a minor role in the GDP. And we have a lot of strength in terms of industrial production and software, everything you can think of that adds into GDP. We're the major player in that. And you can talk about California and New York, of course.
Massachusetts, big
but
time.
I don't know how you translate that into power because, again, there are many Republicans who still work within the blue states because they have to. So I don't. You can't just have a boycott of, okay, well, we're a blue state, so we're not going to pay you this or that, or we're not going to. I mean, I don't know. We have certain powers, but it doesn't translate into something that's usable. I don't know of any way that we could have gotten another 8 million people to come out to vote, like you say, your two acquaintances or friends, But if she ended up with what 67 million votes
on a popular base, she was what 4 million or so short, or 5, something like that.
Yes. Well, he had 72, she had 67. But remember, Biden had 81, or a little bit over 80, but he was close to 81.
Yeah, let's say more of those 14 million had turned out. Let's say 10 million had. That would have made a big difference, right? Poor Brian, you're getting tired. I can see it.
I'm just. I think it's really not because of today, Paul. Quite frankly, I'm still dealing with the effects of yesterday. I did get a nap for a couple hours this afternoon, but I myself, I mull around in my brain. What kind of things can we do? And as one person, I don't really know that I can come up with it, but I say the one thing we can do is you have to have a genius at, I don't want to say propaganda, but you have to have a marketing genius.
Right.
Because we're dealing with social media,
Absolutely.
and
'cause
we're
that's
on
our
social media, but it wasn't
Yeah.
effective.
Yeah.
And I hate
agree with you on
saying it, the
marketing.
negative ads work.
Yeah. I agree with you on the marketing thing. I mean, he has that down. Keep it simple. You know.
Right,
Simple
and that's how he sees what he calls
images,
lying
message.
Ted, lying Kamala,
Yeah.
borders
room for
are.
truth. You know, truth takes too much explanation. Just have these simple, emotional
Right.
images. Absolutely, you're absolutely correct on that. He's
Right.
got that down.
And
The guy's
in a
smart.
certain, that's where I said to David, is a certain pornographic
Maybe think, you know?
element to it, in the sense that it tries to get people in a place. You know, we have, I don't know how I can explain this, but we have, you know, what's called sanctioned life. You know, we have to take care of our bills, we have to cut the lawn, we have to do our lesson plans. But then there's this other world, you know, this sensory world that you can separate. It's our emotions, it's our, you know, creativity, the things that are really in a different realm.
In the television.
Yeah, and he taps into that, and
Yeah.
we seem to keep tapping into sanction life and say, okay, if we just explain this, I show it to them, then that's going to get there. But that's not how it works. You know, it's not how it works at all. And I don't like having to go into that realm, that type of propaganda. But I don't see any other. I don't see anything right now. I mean, even if we do poorly, because we did do poorly under Trump economically, they're still going to find a way to blame us.
Yeah, because they win that image battle.
Right,
Overwhelming.
and no matter how bad it gets, they're going to stick with their team, you know, so to speak. So I'm still depressed, Paul, and I think I'm probably more depressed because, you know, it's if you looked last night, you could see there was a point when I gave up. I was, you know, here I am. I'm a very negative person as a general rule. I was trying to be optimistic last night. I really was, but at some point, I came to this realization: there's no escaping this, and I didn't have anything else. I didn't, aside from looking at the numbers, that I said, you know, I'm not having Karnacki give me any help with this. I'm just looking at this at myself, and I say, the numbers aren't going to work out. And it was just simple math. I'm looking, okay, you only have 3% of the vote left. So I'm at this point, Paul. I'm 64 years old. You're roughly my age. I'm starting to see the beginning of the end, and where you have to just say, you can't give up, but sometimes it's too big to think you can handle this thing in your mind. You can't figure. It's like somebody's trying to figure out, you know, I know I'm going to die, so how am I going to figure this thing out to be able to live forever? You know, or, you know, how can I save my own, you know, physical body somehow? You know, or somehow I'll come up with some. It doesn't work that way. At some point, you come to the realization that, you know, it's like you know, watching the Super Bowl and your team. You just realize in the last 2 minutes you can't win this thing. You know, that's what I'm starting to feel now with what's going on. I see the mechanism, and it's almost like an evolution where you have like too many brown moths. Even though the white moth or the yellow moth or whatever color it is might be more adaptable to the environment, it can't win because there's just still too many of the other side. So I think we have the better party. I think we have the better ideas. I think we have smarter people. We have more empathetic people. But I think the evolution of what's happened in this country is.
And you know, Brian, we haven't even discussed how this sets us back years in terms of the environment. I mean, we haven't even.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that was where I was going to go, by the way, last night with
the
individuals.
End. I mean, you know, whenever the end is, we're just speeding it up now.
And we're going to make Guy McPherson be right. It's not necessarily because of Guy, but
you know,
because
it's going to be drill, baby drill, right? You know, we can get that. All the groundwater is going to be befouled again.
Yeah, so we're in a bad situation. And again, at some point, you're going to say, there's nothing I can do. And then I don't know how you feel, Paul, but I'd like to ask you is like if you have contemplated the possibility of the life on the planet basically being sterilized before our natural death. I mean, to think that you're going to live in a time where entire existence, as far as we know it in the universe, could end. Have you ever really thought I could live during a period of time when the existence of man or anything else will?
Well, we used to talk about this, Brian. I said, you know what? Of all the countless generations, that we would find ourselves in the one that turns out the light at the end. I mean,
right. You did say that.
What's the chances of that? And
could be pretty good now.
It's too frightening to contemplate for me. But I'm getting older. You're getting older, and I wouldn't say we're at the stage. At least I'm not where the grip towards life has been loosened a great deal, but we will eventually get to that point as we age where that grip loosens a little more and we can let go. But I would say I'm not quite there yet, and I don't think you are either.
No, I'm not. I do have a certain idealism. I think you have that too. The Russians say there's this interesting word in Russian called avos, which is very hard to translate. It's kind of like hope, but it's the idea that maybe something better is out there or will come. I always have that.
Right.
But last night...
Well, we live on hope. I still do. I'm guilty of hopium, okay? Always will be. Sorry. I mean, I'm a realist, but I'm also... I will not let go of hope.
Well, I think last night it was like 16, but it's worse now because I can see what he's going to do. I mean, I feel really, really scared for people like Jack Smith, Adam Schiff, because Trump hates them. He feels that they're the ones that were the main ingredient to attacking him.
Cheney's, I guess, Liz Cheney.
Well, yeah, I think. Well, he certainly doesn't like Liz Cheney, but he would go after Schiff. Yeah, the fact that the way that he lobs these personal attacks on more than anybody else. I think he wants Schiff, he wants Jack Smith, and he'll do it. And I have to think that Smith and Schiff are going to have to protect themselves. We are not Trumpers. And we certainly aren't outside of that, Paul. We don't know how far this thing goes. But at least at this time, we're such small potatoes in the soup that I don't think we run the risk of just an outright, gulagging, so to speak. But we're in uncharted territory, in my opinion. Life will go on. But
I can't think of a more important election. I really can't. I mean, in my lifetime, in my adult lifetime, a more important election than what we just went through. And we failed miserably.
Well, maybe in the end, and this might be of some help to people, from Environmental Coffee House, where we are now broadcasting from, also. Those people who are involved in the climate change topic, trying to do something about it. If at some point, as the doomers would say, this is going to happen, maybe there'll be something freeing about it that, that the other side is going to pay the price. You'll actually see them suffer. Now, we will suffer too, of course, but they will go down, and they'll go down hard, and they're going to figure it out eventually. And that's a good thing, but the bad thing is that we may go down just as hard, and we didn't deserve it, and certainly did nothing. So I don't know. I think last night hit me so hard. I want to be positive, but right now, I'll be honest. I was hoping that maybe he would have a heart attack, or something like that, something from his own doing, from his diet.
Don't rule out the assassination seriously. I mean, he's already had two attempts on him.
Right. And although even with those, I think they're so bizarre. Paul, if I can bring this up, I hope you won't mind. We did a show on Epstein, and at the time, both you and I took the position that it was quite likely that he did take his life, and someone just didn't.
Actually, no. I felt that did not. Oh, that he did take his life. Yes, you're correct.
Yes,
You're correct.
right.
Mhm.
I now, and you know, I don't like conspiracies, and I didn't like it then.
Mhm.
I've slowly changed my mind about the Epstein situation. I think I just find it absurd that given the critical nature of him having to be watched, that they didn't, and the fact that he had information on Trump and others. I have to wonder about that one, you know, and I bring that up because you bring up the assassination attempts. They were both Republicans, you know, whatever you want to call it, but at least they were registered. Not successful, and that's good for Trump.
A person was killed on that first one.
That's true. One was killed. They missed and they hit somebody else.
I know what you're getting at, and I cannot agree.
I don't think for the assassinations. I think the assassination attempts were real. They were sloppy, just like the one Democrat at the softball practice.
I do think it's strange that they left him alone for a while, but there's all kinds of human error going on.
And they did cremate him like immediately or something. I don't know what the hell happened there.
Look, you know, you go back in history, there's all kinds of unexplained stuff. I mean, you know,
Lizzie Borden, we don't really know what happened with her.
Well, reality is just not clear cut like that all the time, you know. But okay, my feelings on Epstein haven't really changed, and the reason is you have to do a cost analysis. What is the benefit? What are the benefits? What would be the negatives? The negatives are obvious, that the truth will come out at some point because you're involving others. You can't just go into a jail and knock somebody off without people knowing, and eventually it comes out. So what are the advantages? Well, okay, Epstein's dead, but Gisela was still alive. The victims are still alive. In other words, the truth can come out anyway. And I'm not too sure knocking him off
did
anything.
You're saying with that. Right.
You know, and it's not the Mossad style to involve others.
I do think that Epstein had no future, and I think he knew that. So sometimes death is a better.
He was despondent. He knew this was him.
I just don't like the sloppiness of the workers and the guards, you know, and then the camera wasn't working, you know, that too. So I mean, I have a suspicion. I mean, it was just like Jack Ruby. How the hell did he get away with that?
Nothing's ever clean, you know. But you know, I was a night. I've been a night nurse. I've retired now, but I'm still working some hours. But I've been a night nurse for 14 years, and I'll tell you, the fall asleep factor is real. It's fucking real.
So, would you repeat that again, Paul? I'm sorry, I didn't.
The fall asleep factor. If you're sitting there staring into a security camera, you're going to be asleep very quickly, Brian. I mean, the fact that two people were suddenly asleep, very plausible. I've seen it on the unit, for crying out loud. I can't tell you how many nurses have been fired for falling asleep on the job at night. I mean, it
happens.
You know, the only thing, you know, the security camera being off, okay, you know, I don't have any explanation for that, and I haven't studied it. Maybe there's some other reason, but
it was sloppy. You have to admit, everything was sloppy. It was very sloppy.
Sloppy. Well, it was sloppy, you know. I mean, but life is sloppy, and you know, we assume everything runs, you know, at that picture-perfect precision. It doesn't, you know. I mean, the Kennedy assassination will be debated for decades. You can have arguments on both sides, you know. I mean, nothing is ever clean-cut, Brian. You know that. But you still have to do a cost analysis here. You know, what are the benefits? What are the negatives? And I think the benefits just don't outweigh the risks. You know, what are you getting by this? And you know,
I will say this though, Paul. In Russia, they do that.
Yes, they do.
You know,
we know that, Brian.
If you're a journalist, your lifespan is very, very short for some strange reason.
But even the opposition guy, I mean, they were poisoning him. It's not like they came up and just fired
right?
No,
in fact, somebody made a comment about that.
They were poisoning him slowly, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was, as far as I know, yes, and he wasn't going to live. So, but you know, one can say, I think it was Pasternak that said, you know, in Dr. Zhivago, in a certain sense, Navalny was, and I'm going off on a tangent, was the freest man in Russia. although he was in prison, and because he was still able to say, "I'm going to live like this." He was kind of like Jack Johnson in a certain way. And I
Yeah.
know it's kind of weird to make the comparison; it's really kind of stupid, but
Yeah, Jonathan Nixon talks about that kind of courage of thought too.
yeah,
You know,
you
I
you
mean,
you just say, "Look, I'd rather live and die this
yeah,
way," and
yeah.
that's the
Very
way he
Russian,
did.
really. I think that concept is very Russian. I think
Yeah. And,
to
and,
to
and again, I think we are moving into the behavior of the MAGA crowd is not unlike the Putin crowd. It's very, very similar.
well, very fascist,
Yeah,
very fascist. I mean, I don't know if you see it as much as I do here in Ohio. You know, Toledo is a city, but it's also a rural area. I mean, it's just 5 minutes and you're in the country,
right.
a
You're right
drive.
near
You
Bowling
know,
Green,
I'm seeing those trucks with the flags and the metal nuts hanging down from the
Right,
you always got to have this big hook, because they're gonna
right.
fucking pull the world or whatever they're gonna pull. I mean, it's with these brass nuts or whatever hanging down and
It's
this
so absurd. When you
language.
see something like that, you say, "Well, this guy's really an idiot."
What do they like? They like the mechanical toys. They've got to
Right.
have some,
Beast
some
machine or gun.
environment burning machine. Always all kinds of toys and mechanical toys, and I don't know. It's terrible, Brian. Us categorizing people like this, but
Nice
I'm trying to
toy,
do some
Bill.
humor. Let's do with some humor. At least we can make a joke out of it. Um, what else do they have?
I mean, if you even hear the language of these very
All
people,
kinds
you
of
try, hey,
security
here you got a
devices.
250 Hemi with a side port of a this and that. What the hell
Well,
are
it's
you
funny
talking about,
because
boy?
I walk down this. I take my evening walk, and there's this one lane. I call it MAGA lane. And there's all these Trumpsters on both sides. This one guy, he's got all his mechanical toys and everything, and you walk. I'm just walking down the street. Suddenly, I hear this voice that comes from some camera he's got installed above his garage. Oh, who is there? Oh, yeah. Put my hands up and I
Right.
just walk down the
Yeah.
fucking street. I like setting it off just to be a pain in the ass.
Right.
It's such a stupid thing. And he installed these like motion lights on trees. Not just on his house, but he's got them in trees so that.
And that's sickening, I think that's one of the things that I don't
Believe
miss
they're
about
at the
Ohio. I mean, we have that here, and I'm in a county that is much like say Wood County in Ohio. Cumberland County it's rural and it's like Alabama. But that's the one thing I do remember that was kind of distasteful. Even then, like you remember, even in Bowling Green, it was known for here's the university. It's the second largest university in Ohio, and the big event is the tractor pull. And then you have these farmers. It's I don't know. Ohio is such a bizarre place because you had the universities and you had the cities, which are kind of hip, and it kind of reminded me of New Jersey. And then that expanse, like going up Route 25 or whatever it was. You could have been in Nebraska.
Yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely.
It's
Hasn't
just
changed that much. I mean, it's built up a little bit, but you're right. You could have been in Nebraska.
Was
In
it
fact,
75 that goes up to Toledo, or is it 25?
Yeah, 75 is a major
75.
highway. It goes
But
all the way down to
25 was
Florida.
like where Pretty Boy
Yeah,
Floyd
yeah,
got
yeah.
shot
More
or shot
country.
somebody.
It was a more country-like. It goes into Perrysburg, which has since developed quite a bit. But still, along the way, there's you can see glimpses of its pastoral past, its
Mhm.
rural past. And in fact, I read later, about Pretty Boy Floyd actually had robbed a bank in Bowling Green.
Right.
It was in Worcester, near Main Street, and
They still have his finger, don't they, or something like that in one of the jails?
no, that's something else. That's from a farmer. But
Okay.
Floyd actually, in the shootout, had shot a cop, had killed a cop in the getaway, and he took off down 25. And you drive down 25, you can just imagine Floyd just taking off
flying.
just taking off for Toledo and disappearing within the city like that. And he got away, but eventually they got him in a cornfield somewhere in Ohio near Cleveland. They had him trapped. They had him trapped in some kind of farmhouse. He was asking for food and paying for food from, getting the farmer lady to cook him some dinner, and but the feds were after him, and they got him cornered there and shot him in a cane field in a hail of bullets. But I can just imagine. I always think about that in 25. Imagine myself back in 1932 and seeing Floyd just taken off,
Flying off, right?
with his accomplice wounded from the shootout, and the cop lying dead in a pool of blood right outside Worcester. The bank's no longer there. They put a gas station there now. The
Well,
latest,
wasn't there? I think the was the hotel, or was there bank or hotel or both in Bowling Green? Where, I guess as you
well,
go toward, I don't know. Wasn't there a hotel, like an old one in Bowling Green? It was a really old hotel.
I think you're thinking about the Wood County Historical Museum, which was an old
No,
cemetery.
no, it was. Geez, this goes back because I haven't thought about this for 40 years or 45 years. Is it the Ross Hotel?
Could be.
I think
I'm
that
not.
was called the Ross. I think if I don't know if Pretty
Sounds
Boy
kind of
stayed at the Ross Hotel. Either it
kind of
was
sounds.
near the Ross. I think there's some place called the Ross Hotel in Bowling Green, and it ended around the late 70s or something like that. But it was from the
Wow.
1930s. We have that. If you Bridgeton, we have a lot of. If you go downtown, you see a lot of these old buildings. It kind of reminds me of Bowling Green in a certain sense. It
Mhm.
has these old buildings, but they have no real value like they used to have.
There's a charm to old these small towns in Ohio because you think back. It's like a time capsule. You're thinking back to a time when there were a couple of businesses that were large enough to employ enough people to keep a town viable. And now what do we have left? Just these houses where people still living in that, and they probably are either working remotely or commuting to a bigger city. But I mean, they're kind of, and the names, like Rising Sun, Ohio. I mean, you could drive through Rising Sun in like 30 seconds, and
Right. Well, how
you
about
know,
that one place in Bowling Green? It was. I think I went. Like everybody kept telling me about it, like the name, and I went there. It was the ditch. It was called Poe Ditch.
Portage. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was named after some kind of canal where they used to portage. They could,
Yeah.
you know, ca- you know, uh, move goods, down some canals. I mean, that's what
Like sounds like the Volga boatmen or something like that.
like Erie Canal or something.
But I'll
But
tell you what did kind of it was kind of weird looking was I remember when I used to go up toward your house in Toledo, and folks, Paul's from Toledo, Ohio, which is right near the border of Michigan.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, we touched
I
it.
remember the Maumee. It was just maybe on a gray day. It was kind of scary in a way because it was a gray town and the water almost looked gray, and
Well, the
what
Maumee is, it's just
great fight was from what
good
Tunney
school
fought the
district.
Maumee or
It's
something.
pretty.
Was it Tunney or was it
Oh, you're thinking of okay, so
Willard fight there? I don't know who fought there.
Willard versus Jack Dempsey, 1919.
Like it was like a
Was it
95-degree day in Toledo.
1919? They quickly built a stadium. It wasn't in Maumee. It was actually off a small park that's off Summit Avenue, which is north of downtown. Willard came into town and stayed at a specific address on Robinwood Avenue, and I don't know where Dempsey stayed, but you can still see the house where Willard stayed. It still stands, and it's now the Hood. But and they after the fight they took apart the stadium, which could hold a
It
lot,
wasn't unusual for them to do those kind of things then too.
and then they just took the lumber and they just disassembled it,
Right.
and almost immediately. Um, yeah, it turned out in boxing history, boxing history, as one of the great classic
It's hard to
fights.
watch that fight. That's one of the ones I
It's
actually don't watch. I can't
brutal.
look at it. It's that vicious.
I can't blame you. It's horrible.
It's hard to watch.
The
Some people
accused,
watch it just for the fascination of how a man could get pummeled that badly, especially since he's so big, but he goes
right,
down like
right.
Goliath.
Dempsey had him hurt, and he was relentless, and the guy could take a good licking, and he did, to his detriment. He
But
broke
what
her.
was interesting, I remember that they said it was so hot that it was close to 100 degrees or something like that.
It was very hot. I think, remember that Jack Johnson's loss to Willard was in high heat in
Right.
Mexico, too. So,
It'll
or
do
was
it
it
too.
Havana? I can't remember where. But
It
the
was
point
hot
is
there too,
that
right?
it was a hot day, and Willard broke at least one rib, He was just he had
Are you
broken
talking about in
cheek-
Toledo or are you talking about in Cuba?
Toledo, yeah, broken
Yeah.
cheekbones,
Cheekbones,
orbital, fractures, whatever. I mean, Dempsey beat the shit out of him, and the
Right.
guy just absorbed it all. And
And
Doc
by the
Kearns-
way, it was interesting about that fight. Now we're going to boxing now, but
Doc Kearns, who was Dempsey's manager, who had a falling out with Dempsey, later, like in the 30s and 40s, made the false claim that
about the plaster.
that Dempsey he was using plastic. Was it Paris plastic? What was that thing? Paris
Plaster
or
of
something?
Paris or something like that. Yes.
Plaster of Paris, right? In his gloves, and it was clearly false.
Well, you know what's interesting, I think that we could, if you like, they say that Dempsey was kind of like the first one to start using real boxing technique when he had the Dempsey roll and whatnot. And here's a classic example. If you wanted to think about how an old time boxer fighting a new time boxer, what would happen? Now, of course, Dempsey was a hell of a fighter, but if you have technique and then you're using old school, and then you can see he was just open and he put him down like a totem pole and just it was like I say, I can't watch it.
Dempsey never had difficulty with big opponents. They were just tailor made for him. He'd have difficulty with like slick guys, you
Right.
know. Like Sam Langford would have given him all kinds of trouble if he had fought Sam Langford. Tunney obviously ran rings around him, but against a big guy like Willard, Firpo,
Yeah.
or even I think Wills, who he never fought, was black heavyweight.
I think he
wouldn't have
sparred
been
with
to-
Wills.
Yeah, he would have done he would have done okay. But really, when I think of technique, believe it or not, I think back to James Corbett. Corbett really was a highly skilled boxer.
Except he made the
And-
grave mistake fighting. Who's the guy that had the great left hook? It was not even a big guy. He was a world champ, Bob Fitzsimmons.
You think about Fitzsimmons?
Fitz got him right in the solar plexus and put him
Yeah,
straight down.
He had Fitz down though earlier in the fight. I don't know if you knew that, but he had him down. He had him.
Yeah,
hurt.
I mean he was winning the fight as far as I know.
He was winning the fight, and then but Fitz was just a big banger, and he got it in. You know, he got it right.
Oh, you could see it. It was so effective. It's a modern day punch, and he waited, and he finally got him. And it was like Joe Louis, you know, hitting the rest
Well,
of it.
when you go back to, and I'm a really big fan of early boxing, say from, you know, the late 1890s to say 1920s. I love that period, and when I think back on it, what we see is a lot of great black boxers who never had a chance. They were
Right.
clearly amongst the world's best, if not the best. Okay, not in every case, but certainly. And one guy that was highly touted was Peter Jackson, who Bob Fitzsimmons claimed was the best fighter in the world. And you know, he and Corbett fought a 50-round draw. So it shows you how good Corbett was. 50 rounds, Brian.
Mhm.
And I don't remember the date, but yeah, I mean,
Was it Errol Flynn? I think played Corbett in that movie.
yeah. What do they call it? Gentleman Jim, I think.
Gentleman
the movie
Jim,
was.
right?
Oh, Flynn.
Alan Hale Jr. or Alan Hale was in that. You have, the skipper's father is in that one, I think.
Errol Flynn. Oh my God.
That dude was a
You
big
know?
dude that played Sullivan. I don't know who was the actor, but he was huge.
Brian, I don't recall seeing that movie. I must have seen
I
it.
saw it
I'm
actually last week. My mother-in-law was watching it, so
familiar with
caught
it,
it.
but on YouTube you can watch some of these old.
you can
movies.
find it on like the Turner Classic or something like that.
Yeah, nice channel, but I don't have a TV, so I don't get to watch it. But
I
yeah.
can't watch the black and white films from the 30s because the music behind, and if you look at it, we I think we discussed this too. The acting back then was over the top because I think what we had stage actors, and then they apply that type of over dramatic speech to the film, and what you got was this just almost like a false no, but you know, that kind of just overdoing it, and it's just hard to watch that for me
You still
because
say the genius of what was his name? The guy who, not Charlie Chaplin, but he did a lot of Dangerous Studs and all. that. What was it?
Buster Keaton.
Buster Keaton. You can still see the genius of Keaton.
Oh, he's
and,
brilliant. Yeah.
And
And he was funny as hell. I mean, I can watch that and still laugh at it. Some of the things that he did.
oh hell yeah! I mean that scene where that facade of the
Right,
house,
just falls right over it. That was
yeah,
dangerous.
that had to be totally precise. It was
Right.
extremely dangerous. If that thing had landed on me, it was game over.
Right.
I mean, that was just
Yeah,
incredible.
that was
I mean,
quite a scene. You know.
yeah, amazing genius, really, filmmaking genius. Who was the name of that really popular guy, Fat something?
Oh yeah,
He was the highest paid Hollywood actor at the time. Can you believe
Arbuckle,
that?
Fatty Arbuckle.
Yeah, Fats Arbuckle.
And he
Fatty,
took
Fatty
a
Arbuckle.
hit.
You ever see any of his films? I started watching some of them.
I
and-
watched Fatty Arbuckle in a film with, I think it was with Oliver Hardy when it was silent, because I think Oliver Hardy was in silent films.
It's possible, yeah.
And
With the-
Arbuckle, and I actually, it's hard to watch because with Arbuckle, I mean, he got a really raw deal. I mean, he wasn't guilty of anything, and they nailed
Oh,
him.
he wasn't. He wasn't guilty of that.
No. They said it
that-
had something to
that
do
one?
with an underage girl and all that kind of stuff.
Right. So it's statutory
Well,
rape.
it ruined his career, and it was false.
Was that
So-
statutory rape though? Wasn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, but I don't think he did anything. I'm just saying that they accused him of it,
Yeah.
and there's nothing worse than that. You know, when you don't do something, people accuse you of something that's.
Yeah, you're right. I mean that sent him.
He
and
took a
before
big
that,
hit.
He was,
He was a
Hollywood's
big
highest
star.
paid actor.
But I did see.
Yeah.
I've seen Arbuckle in the silent films, and I remember one with Oliver Hardy. Oliver Hardy started in the, I believe he started in the silent film era.
Hardy's brilliant. Oliver Hardy's brilliant.
Yeah, that's it's
I mean, fingers, he,
Right.
just
right,
brilliant
right.
stuff.
Yeah, he did that kind of
Really?
thing. And yeah, he had it was that. Where he took his hat and he's doing this.
That's the thing.
And it's funny how you pick up on that. I mean, but there's that idiosyncrasy. It works, I mean, it's like watching somebody walk down a hall and you can like hear their footsteps. You know who it is just by the way they are. Thank you. By the way that they're walking, that idiosyncrasy, and that's with those stars. I mean, you had that. Joe E. Brown, he was a comedian I guess in the 30s. He had this huge smile from here to here. It's a physical actor. Yeah, and I guess I guess like soldiers in World War I probably watched a lot of silent films. When they had a break or something like that, the Chaplin films. And, it's kind of a shame too because it was a magical era.
I love watching the reading about more reading, but also watching some of the old films. Do you think that the gorgeous starlets at the time, Brian, would have been considered beautiful today?
No, and I think first of all you have to look at the hairstyles. If you can use a program and superimpose a different hairstyle and maybe different clothes on them, I mean there are some.
I think.
I mean, look, you took the 30s or 40s, like Hedy Lamarr. Hedy Lamarr is going to win in any any time period. I would say Rita Hayworth is going to make it in any time period. But there is a problem, I think, though, in that period, the ideal woman was kind of Rubenesque, and that is not something today that we
I get you.
see.
But I also think in the silent films they were kind of Lillian Gish, kind of girly types.
Right. They had googly eyes and things like that.
And young, just played towards the male at the time, who could pretty much do whatever they wanted with a young.
Right. And by the way, Paul, Larry David once said that, and this is interesting because he was absolutely serious. He said he thinks people, especially women, are getting better looking as generations go on. Now, I don't know if that's true. It could be a matter of taste. I certainly don't want to comment on something like that, but aside from the fact that he said that.
I have no idea, but I can't make that claim.
I don't. I just don't. I think in the silent era, I mean, there was first. You saw how the bathing suits were back then. They were full body bathing suits. Again, the
it
people
was
weren't
it was
working
an
out.
unathletic body type, you know. I
Right.
mean, the athletic look came in later, Brian. You know, I mean,
But I do think the male, like you look at the Earl, we're just talking about Earl Flynn or Tyrone Power,
mm,
uh, Farley
but
Granger, all these
Taylor's
like
buddy,
names, they would probably be
yeah.
doing real
Well,
well
the
now.
gay guy who, the gay actor who was very good looking, Elizabeth Taylor's good friend. Who am I thinking of? Was in. He died in a car accident.
Rock Hudson.
No, not Rock Hudson. Died in a car accident fairly early. James Dean. She was a friend of James Dean, but I'm thinking of great actor
It wasn't
Montgomery.
Farley Granger. Was
Montgomery Clift.
was
Montgomery
that
Clift.
Montgomery Clift?
Clift was
Yeah,
a
he
good
was gay,
looking,
right?
yeah, a good,
Or
very good looking
bisexual, one or the other.
actor who would retain that today, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, I think that's true. So I think that we're kind of rough. I just think that there with females back then, a certain body type was considered more attractive than what I mean. Today you wouldn't be saying that. You know,
Well,
you just look at the
today
artwork,
it's a more athletic look, I think.
right?
You know, a little more toned and all that stuff. You know,
It's very
showers,
hard
things
to
like that.
compare that. It'd be like saying, okay, like Bob Hayes couldn't beat
Mhm.
Bull, not Bull. What's his name?
Usain. You know,
Usain Bolt, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, but you have to account for the turf and what they're wearing, and so I hate making those comparisons. I mean, you have to,
I hate doing it too. Yeah,
you
it's not
just
fair.
have to say that it's like with Elton John's. Was it Elton John? No, it was actually Shatner of all people. Guy, I'm not really a big fan of his work,
Brian,
but
I love it.
I keep seeing him on Battle of the Network Stars, and Gabe Cotter beats him at the 100-yard dash. Yeah. Yeah, his live album lacked something, but he said something. He says, like, people talk about him being a has-been and has-beens, but he said, but remember, think of the sentence has been. You were something. You made it, and I think you have to look at it that way. I mean, at that time, nobody could beat Jack Johnson. At that time, nobody could beat Jess Willard. So it is what it is, because there's always going to be people who are going to get better and better and better. I think.
Well, I think boxing's a little bit of an exception. Of course, the athletes are much better today, Brian, but we had a greater percentage of the population that were open to boxing back in those days, because we had the number of people being exploited was greater.
Right.
The rules were rougher. We had divisional battles. You'd have middleweights fighting heavyweights.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Less padding. I mean, they were monsters back then, and I think they could definitely hold their own today. Many of them.
I think. I'll put it this way. I think that because they say in boxing styles are what really matter. I think there would be individuals whose style, like you mentioned, like Dempsey, be apropos. Now again, you're dealing with like the weights, but there are like Firpo. If Firpo had fought somebody today who's kind of big, like Wilder or something like that, if he came at him and got close to him, he might be able to really do some damage, because he's so aggressive, So it's hard to compare. I think obviously you can look at sprinters and look at the times, and you can obviously see the times.
That's measurable.
You can measure it, but even then, it's you have to account for so many things.
It's funny,
and
Brian,
the fact that there's more population, so you're dealing with.
We all know the greatness of Joe Louis, but his trainer Jack Blackburn was a badass, and his career, he's definitely one of the greatest fighters in history.
Right. Well, and that's why I don't. We talked about Cinderella Man with Braddock. I think one of the things about Braddock that bothers me the most is he would not give Louis that fight unless I think it was something like 10% of future earnings, and that was. He's getting.
Yeah, that bothers. Yeah, but that was a more common practice back then, Brian. I mean, people would.
Well, that I didn't know, but that's
make deals with the mob to get that heavyweight title shot. I mean that title shot. And that kind of purse domineering like that was actually a more common process than we imagined.
Well, maybe
So
it bothered me so much because Lewis struggled financially. He had to get help from like
later on he did.
It just wasn't fair, and he wasn't good with his money. And he gave. And when I say he's not good with his money, he gave away his money to people.
Yeah.
Which he gave till it hurt, and it was kind of a shame. But
so did Ali. Remember, Ali had to sell the name, the brand, the Ali brand, his own name. He sold it, I think, for $50 million, or his family did, because he was out of money. So Ali lost even control of his own name. For marketing, promotional purposes. He sold it. These things are sad, but, that's the sports world, right?
Well, like you said, life is sloppy, right? I mean, we can apply to the political.
It's not clean. Not clean.
And, and that is the issue that every human must face. This thing is, and I think there is this conception that things will work out, as you've mentioned, and it doesn't work that way. You're always an inch from death, and that's morbid but true.
Yeah, every day, man, dying a little more.
Yeah, right. My neighbor, and here's the funny thing was, he seemed old to me. He was in his 60s, and I'm in my 60s now, and I swear I remember him. He's sitting there on this reclining chair. And my dad walks into the den and says, "Carl, how the hell are you doing?" "I'm dying every day, Jack." And my mom and his wife are looking at him like he's nice. He says, "Carl, why do you have to say something like that?" "I am." And he died like a year later. Like one day, I look out. I'm getting ready to go to school. It's a cloudy morning, and I see this ambulance. And it was the first time I ever saw a dead body because I had to go. I went to his viewing, and I didn't like it. I didn't like seeing the dead body. I mean, he was just alive like 2 weeks ago, and I heard him say, "I'm dying every day," and he was. I don't know what was wrong with him, but he was English, actually. It was funny. He drank. I remember he drank a lot of beer, and he'd sit and watch TV and watch a baseball game, and
every day.
Dying every day. And he just said it so clearly, "Jack, I'm dying every day." And my dad didn't expect that, it was, and like his wife, Mrs. Watson, her name was Frances Watson. She said, Carl, and here I am. I'm 6 years old, but I heard that. I said, shit. I said, this isn't anything happy pappy here. This he's on his way out.
Oh gosh.
So, and he obviously, looking back at that moment, because I remember that, and he knew that I was in front of him, and he just, it was just the way he was. He was a real nice guy, but he didn't live too long, and he enjoyed his beer, and that's something.
So one change for me is I've gone into what I call quiet retirement. So I'll be getting Social Security for the first time in December. I did apply for November. I turned 65, actually in a couple of days. And
so you're getting early Social Security.
Well, I mean 65. You want to call
it's
it
close
early
enough.
Security. Yeah. I mean, yeah, sure. It's early because my, full retirement age is actually 66 and 9 months or something. Now, what that means basically is I'm limited as far as how much payroll income I can have,
right,
in addition to the monthly check. My monthly check is paltry. It's like $17.80. I spent 11 years in Asia where I wasn't paying payroll, Social Security. That really hurt me. And but I did get my 30 years in at least. But it would have been a lot better if I'd been paying in all those years instead of adventuring around.
Right.
So I'll be getting that in December, and so I'm going to be working enough to earn my 1860, which I'm allowed on a gross basis. Okay, to supplement that, because I can't live on 1780, at least
right.
I'd rather not right now. My wife still works, of course. She's younger by a year and some months. Now, once I'm 66 and 9, I suppose I could work a more aggressive schedule, but who's going to do that? I mean, as you get older, I probably won't do that. But
well, Paul, I have to tell you, My father's last reunion at West Philly High was, I think, in 1989, maybe, and it was the 60-year reunion or 50-year reunion. There was a woman there. I think she was 91, and I kid you not, she was still teaching. She just died teaching. Now, very few people do that across the country, but you always hear about 2 or 3 teachers, and I certainly don't think I could do that.
Yeah, but I can see that because teaching can be spiritually rewarding. Nursing in a hospital right now, I don't see too much spiritual benefit from doing that. I mean, I will admit to you in the audience, I can't stand it anymore. I can't take it anymore. I mean, the rules, regulations, the constant interruptions from management. I mean, I just can't do it anymore. But I'm sticking around for another year at least doing this.
Do you still have to clean people up at all?
No, in my field, I'm in behavioral health. We don't have those.
Right. But you'd have to deal with somebody who's abusive and.
Yeah, I'm not medical. We're not so medically focused where you got these helpless folks.
Right.
I mean, you do get them from time to time, but for the most part, I don't work in Jerry Psych. Where you're going to get a lot of that. I mean, it happens from time to time, but I really play my age card well and just. Here's my age card. I don't do ADLs here. Let some young person break their back bending over. I don't have the back for that anymore.
I got you. Well, that's good, Paul. I'm glad to hear that.
I'm telling you, so I'm getting some whiff of retirement. I know Dave's probably fully retired. He has been fully retired, so he knows. But
he retired in his 50s.
Stress has reduced quite a bit. I'm doing more exercising. I exercise every day. I get a lot of rest, so I can read. I've got my mental pursuits. It's great, folks. I mean, if you've got some Pollyannish views of retirement, I can tell you that for the most part, yeah.
Well, it's interesting you're mentioning this, Paul, because Ronnie said to me, "I'm deathly afraid of Trump taking away your Social Security and maybe even your pension."
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy teaching Russian now. I mean, it's something that I always wanted to do, and I finally have it now. So I still want to teach, but at the same time, now I do have to worry about Trump and maybe.
Well, isn't your pension more state-based? Isn't it state-based?
It's state-based.
So he can't do too much to it.
No, I'm not worried. I'm more worried about the Social Security.
Yeah, no, that's real. He's gonna raise the retirement age, right? I mean, feasibly, what are they going to do? They're going to raise the retirement age, full retirement age. If I do that, what else are they likely to do? I can't see them reducing benefits. They'd be just.
I would say that's the one way they would grandfather it in and keep raising it. Now that's going to. You know what happened in France when they did that? They started lighting fires. The young kids. They were hip to that. They knew what was going on.
The French are, they have spines. I mean, if you take anything away from them, they're out in the street and they put real political pressure on them. With Social Security, I will see this. This is what I'm afraid of. When I talk to the younger generation, I would say not so much. Well, certainly millennials fall into that category, as well as Gen Z. I think it's Gen X. I'll ask them, do you think Social Security is going to be around? And they all say the same thing. No. And I said, no, you should not say that, because as soon as you mentally accept the possibility that Social Security will not be around, it will not be around. The politicians will be able to do that, and you'll be able to
you never get it back.
You weather the blow, and you must not have that attitude. You must have the attitude that it must be around.
Right.
I think that's very dangerous, Brian.
I would agree with you, because there's an old saying in teaching that if you give something up at the table of negotiations, just remember you're never going to get that back. And I have experienced that. Like, for example, when they say, okay, well, and where I teach, there was a time we went from teaching 5 classes a day to 6, and we thought it was going to be just a 1-year thing where we had to accept that for 1 year, and then we've been still teaching 6. Now they want to go to 7. They were going to pay us more, but they'd have to pay us a lot more. But they won't do that. The
great danger, if there's anything to be adjusted, Brian, the danger zone really is any kind of healthcare benefits, because of the high costs associated, and they're always going up each year, and it's a heavy burden for employers and state organizations and city organizations to keep that as generous.
Well, that's why, Paul, another reason why, if I were to retire, see, right now we're paying, I think, around $13,000 or $14,000 a year for health insurance. If I didn't, because I was grandfathered in, I don't get the free one, but I get, maybe like $2,000 a year. I would save like $12,000 a year by retiring. So, and I would be in a lower tax rate. So I'd actually probably save money by retiring.
Mhm.
I just don't feel like retiring yet. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's
Well, you get
idealism.
more meaning out of your work than I do. I was never born to be a
Well, I
nurse.
had
It's
debts
just-
to repay to myself. I remember with Bowling Green, I didn't like studying business. I got really sick of it. It was something that I had to make some choice, and I did it. My parents were open to whatever I wanted to do, but I didn't. My world was so small, I didn't know. And then when I finally, if you remember, I started taking Russian when I was 20. And then, of course, I had Dr. Hartman later. And that's when my everything started clicking in college. And I would always get all A's and things were, because that was what I wanted to do. So when I came
Yeah.
out of college and I couldn't find a job with Russian, it made me very despondent. And luckily I got into playing music, as you know, and that helped me survive. But then when I got into education, I got it through teaching business. But now that the opportunity is here, it's what I wanted to do when I was 22. And so this is where you can see I don't want to give that up, because there was a certain duty to myself. Like, I
Yeah.
planned on this. This was a goal. And I don't want to just quit after 2 years of it. On the other hand, I'm probably losing money. I mean, even though I'm making more money by not retiring, the cost of health insurance is so high as a teacher that it
Is
just
there a
doesn't.
possibility of going part-time and teaching your Russian, or do you have to do this full-time?
No, I mean, first of all, and this is a good thing, but it's locked me in. As you know, Russian's not a popular language across the country. On average, since the 1930s, aside from like 1957 with Sputnik, there have only been 400 schools roughly a year that teach Russian high schools. Bridgeton, where I teach, I now have 140 students studying Russian. That's number one in New Jersey, first of all. It's number 3 in the country. And so the district, one of the original principal who got me this, the opportunity, it opened things up because they couldn't get Spanish teachers. We have a couple Spanish teachers, but they have so many open classes they can't fill the teacher. So with me, it was a lot easier for them to get another business teacher, which they did. And then I came in teaching Russian. So I automatically got this, huge group of kids, some who chose Russian, some who did not. And now I'm trying to make sure that they're interested in it. So now it's become so successful. And it's an oddity, because we have so many kids who speak Spanish, they don't really even need to take Spanish because they're fluent. So they take Russian. And so I have this weird thing happening, Paul, where all these successes are happening very late in my life.
That's great.
And I hate giving it up. But on the other hand, I have to admit that I certainly would like to be able to relax during the day and not get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. But
I think
it's changed.
what would interest me is if you could actually have the time to expand your reading with the great Russian writers.
Right.
It's not just because you're in command of Russian. It's not just the 19th century, but also the 20th century. The Strugatsky brothers, for example. If you look up on eBay any book by them, they were very prolific. This is Arkady and I think Boris and Arkady or Strugatsky. Their books just go for ridiculous prices. And I read one book by them, Definitely Maybe it was called. Science fiction, but really highly regarded. It'd be really totally cool to read that in Russian.
Well, I certainly now am at the point where when I do read, I read in Russian.
That'd be
I
totally
have
unbelievable.
read Dovlatov. I mean, he's dead. I really love his stuff. He reminds me. I like Bukowski. I know a lot of people don't really get into Bukowski, but there's a certain directness in Bukowski's writing that I like with Dovlatov. It's the same, except it's
Very
in.
popular, Brian. I mean, he's very popular. You're not the only one that likes Bukowski. There's a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a love hate thing. I mean, some people like his stuff, and some people really hate it. They say he's trash, but it's
Well,
humorous
it's
sometimes.
not highly polished, but it's certainly decent. You know, it's pretty good.
Is it
Actually.
kind of like a watered down Dahlberg, or no?
Watered down Celine? Celine was the French writer who wrote about down and out characters and down and out life. I call him just generally a watered down poet, but not in a too negative sense. I mean, the guy is definitely worth.
He had a
reading.
reason behind his directness, because he said he didn't like this. I don't want to call it flamboyant speech, but it just, when the sentence dragged on. I mean, who was the one that was the guy who just kept dragging on sentences? For.
Well, there's so many. I don't know. Who
I
he
don't
would have
remember,
been.
but we just go on and on and on. And he says, I don't like the idea of saying, and the fly fell upon the green curtain upon which the sun, that kind of thing. He said, get to the point, get right to the point.
That was effective doing that. It was very effective. I mean, when I look for in poetry, it's like. Because what I see poetry doing is describing the very difficult to describe, the indescribable,
Right.
basically. And really, the really good poets can do it. And that's what fascinates me. Maybe it's a personal mission, a personal odyssey, but I tend to prefer those type.
You probably won't like the Russian poets, because Russian poetry is very, very regimented. It likes that rhythm and sound.
I mean, I'm limited to translation, so I can't. I think.
Well, I can just tell you that it's based upon, like, Pushkin is very careful with rhythm and rhyme sounds and the beauty of that, rather than the actual meaning.
Well, he's the father. He's the father of. I'm thinking of. I'd like to reread Turgenev. As you know, I was a big Russian literature reader in college.
Right.
I read so many of them. But
I can attest to that. I can remember him on the couch just reading.
Yeah, Turgenev. I'd like to reread Fathers and Sons, and particularly that one. It didn't hit me so much as a college kid when I was reading that. I've never read Goncharov's Oblomov yet. That's a classic in Russian.
I saw the movie.
That one, Oblomov. That was like a what they call it, superfluous man. They use the word.
Yeah.
There's still Dostoevsky. I haven't read. He had the 4 great novels: Crime, Punishment, Possessed, Idiots, and Brothers Karamazov. I've only read 2 of the great 4, Brothers K and Crime, Punishment. I still haven't read Possessed, and I mean those were his 4 biggies.
Have you read The Idiot?
I think I've had enough of Tolstoy. I mean, I pretty much read everything by him.
Well, Tolstoy's different, because Tolstoy. Now, I have not read War and Peace, but it's probably a much easier read than Brothers Karamazov. Russians will tend to. They will always put Tolstoy up top, saying that if you read War and Peace, it's very understandable. It's just very long.
It is. No, I don't. I feel no compulsion to read any more Tolstoy, but certainly Dostoevsky I'd like to go back to. Chekhov is always a fun read.
Yeah, Ward 6 was just tremendous.
I've read so many of his stuff, so much of his stuff. Gorky, to me, is totally overrated, not really interested. And then I'd like to go to the 20th century and read more of, the Strugatskys and the Soviet science fiction. And
Grossman is one to check out, too, because it's harder to read, because it's
who's
the
that?
account. Grossman, Vasily Grossman. He was the one during the communist period, during the fight between the whites and the reds,
right?
And up until I think the 40s. I mean, he was a war correspondent, but he wrote in such detail, and that's one's hard.
I'd be interested in that. I have a good.
Hey, Robert Chandler he's a British translator.
Right.
He's probably the best Russian translator out there. he translated just about all of Grossman's works.
Okay, I'll have to check him out. The thing with Soviet literature is you got to be careful for the ass lickers, the Sholokovs, say. He was an ass licker. I mean, you could tell, you read his stuff, and, he's got to, pay his obeisance to the Bolsheviks. And, I'd rather pass that. Pasternak, to some extent, was restricted, but Solzhenitsyn, man, he didn't hold back.
Right.
And I'd like to read. I read all 3 Gulags, but archipelagos, and they were all great. But
and you read One Day in the Life.
August 1914, and the follow-up. I still have to read that. Poetry, Yesenin, translation. Yeah, it makes
He's
some
the one who
sense.
died early too. Yesenin.
Yeah, he has. It makes some sense in translation. But I have to be careful with the poetry because I think poetry, really, you're restricted to your own language.
Right, I would agree with you. Unless there are these, rare instances where somebody's able, like Conrad. You mentioned to me that Conrad actually sounded very good in English.
Yes,
I did read Heart of Darkness.
Right.
He wrote better in a foreign language than in his own.
The thing is that, so that restricts me to the English writing poets, which fortunately there's a rich mosaic of that, the Americans and the English. I mean, you're talking pretty thick canon there. So I'm happy with that. But I can never really read Russian poetry in translation. I don't think it's fair. Pushkin, of course, I do, but and I have a complete Pushkin in verse and prose. Did you like his,
I think the beauty in Pushkin is the lilt and the sound of it. It always flows beautifully. So no matter what the content, it just sounds nice. It has a smell, so to speak. I mean.
Oh yeah, that's what they say. I mean, they say he's. I mean, I read Eugene Onegin obviously when I was in college, and
by the way, I'm that's part of my poetry readings every week. I read Evgeny Onegin with a professor.
Freaking great.
He's just trying to force me to memorize like a lot of poetry. I'm not good at that.
Yeah, I mean, what pieces of novels do you assign? Any or short stories, prose? What kind of Russian prose do you assign?
Well, obviously, of course, I told you Dovlatov. I enjoy that. I'll be quite frank with you. Most of what I read is the classics. Like I constantly have like Brothers Karamazov right next to me here in Russian. It's kind of silly maybe to you, but I have like Sherlock Holmes in Russian. I read that just for.
Right, I rate Brothers Karamazov the greatest novel I've ever read in my life, and I've read a lot.
And I agree. If there's one book you could live on, it'd be that.
I've read War and Peace. It's Brothers Karamazov's greatest, in my opinion. I mean, War and Peace is a work of genius because it's got all these. How does a man write about all this large number of characters all in the same book, and you switch scenes?
And how did he do it at that time period? I mean. Maybe because of his life.
That's why novels are great because they changed the whole paradigm of novel.
I mean, you could even go as far as saying that the study of psychology could have been based on Dostoevsky.
Yeah.
In a certain sense, I mean, he looked at we can. Argue what the points he's trying to make in Brothers Karamazov, but still, it's all psychology of the individual.
I mean, Freud loved Dostoevsky, but he went farther back too, to the Greeks, and Freud was extremely brilliant man, and well-read, well-educated. I love Freud. Was he right in everything? Of course not. But
and nor should he have to be. That's the thing.
But you're talking about one of the all-time great geniuses in history, Sigmund Freud. There's no doubt about it.
I wish quite frankly, Paul, I wish I had earlier just attempted to stick my face in the book, because a lot of the Russian was too hard for me to have the patience to sit and read it. I mean, I could get through it, but
hard. You got that full schedule. You got the stuff at home.
And that always killed me.
you got to stay up in politics. You run this show,
Right.
which means you have to stay
And I still have my
abreast of.
guitar. I still have to work on those. I'm
Yeah,
working
yeah.
on a
No, you
fugue
got a
right
lot of
now.
things
It's
going. I
hard.
totally understand.
Yeah.
For me, I'm a little bit. I got I've got generous portions of my time. I'm reading this biography of the Ford family: Henry Ford, Edsel Ford, his son, and Henry II.
Hmm.
And it's a massive book, but great. I really love reading this. I'm not really interested in engineering, and it's not really about that. It's about America, America from 1900 to the 1980s. Involves labor unions. It involves, um, Ford was heavily involved in World War One as far as a peace.
Conspiracy theories. And Hitler actually read a lot of Ford, like some of his
Well, Ford
pamphlets.
was anti-Semitic.
Yes.
He believed in the protocols of the Elder Zion.
Hmm.
That hoax. He believed in that. He, like many people of his time, equated Jewish Americans with money lending. The financial world, which
Right.
he never trusted, never invested his money in stocks and things like that. So I mean, it's a typical. He was an engineer. He was an engineer genius. But as far as social understanding, forget it. I mean,
Right.
no, there was some, because he did believe in paying his people so that they would buy his own cars. Okay, so I mean, he had some cleverness and stuff there. But as far as any kind of artistic understanding, forget it. Or political, forget it.
Right.
It's like a movie star. He's good at movies. Knows about Hollywood, but doesn't know crap about
And it's funny
politics.
that you remember that there's that show called House, and the guy played
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
doctor. It's funny they had him on like some kind of show, and they were asking medical questions. He couldn't get one of them right. He says, I just memorized my lines. I don't know a damn thing about it. I don't
Great
know what a
actor.
Band-Aid is. It was just so
Laurie.
funny because he sounds so intelligent as a doctor, Dr. House. But
Yeah.
then,
What was his real name? Is that Hugh Laurie? Or
yes,
no, not
Hugh
Hugh
Laurie.
Laurie is
Yeah,
funny.
Hugh Laurie.
Yeah.
But it was funny because he really sounded stupid when they were asking him, like, what's a contusion? And he's like, he said, listen, he said, I just read my lines, and that's that.
Did you
And
ever see
it's
him?
actually kind of pleasing because to know that like this guy's that talented that he can make you think that and that actually is a danger. Maybe there's some hope. Maybe we have to out Trump and have somebody who can, some actor who can play some powerful. You don't have to be the top. I mean, like, look, Mike Tyson. As tough as he was, he's been knocked out. But they say that a lot of times he would get in people's head, and so he becomes even greater than what you think he
You're
is.
familiar with the Wooster and Jeeves series? Because he starred in that as Bertie Wooster.
No.
English series. You can look it up on YouTube or whatever. They're funny shows. It's he's an upper class twit.
And I know he's a comedian, and he also plays piano. He's very good.
Yeah, no, he's an upper class twit, and Jeeves is his buddy, friend of Christopher Hitchens.
Oh, Martin Amis? No.
Not Martin Amis. He was not. He's an actor, remember, but he's also very effective in the atheist arguments. What the hell? It's not Hugh Laurie. What the hell? Stephen Fry.
Okay.
So Stephen Fry played Jeeves, the smart butler that saves Bertie from everything, and Bertie spends his time in the drones club. That's it's just a funny lampoon of the upper class. And Woodhouse, the writer, was so good at that. But anyway, Hugh Laurie is great as Bertie Wooster.
Yeah, he's
And all
very
his
talented.
buddies, they're all rich and useless and dumb. Yeah, and have funny names. Like his best buddy's Freddie Threepwood. It's a funny show. It's English, but
I'll have to check that out. I will have
uh,
to. And then, quite frankly, I might have seen that before because I remember vaguely him playing some role of some twitty guy. And the reason I would remember that, Paul, is that because he plays such an intellectual, that the discrepancy between the two
well, Rowan
is so
Atkinson
great.
did the same thing. Blackadder, he's just witty and very talkative, and then Mr. Bean, he doesn't say a word. You know,
Doesn't say anything.
I mean, these guys are great comic
He
geniuses.
makes
you know?
sounds like what the hell is that?
I
Can you imagine
figured that
saying
Mr.
that to
Bean would
people?
appeal
Like,
to Americans, but yeah, I figured that Mr. Bean would appeal to Americans, but Blackadder was more for the aficionados. You know,
I can imagine. So, listen,
Black.
Paul, I'm gonna shut it down, okay? Because I'm gonna go to sleep. I don't want to fall asleep on you here.
Yeah, I'll close with one thing. I think that you and Dave, even though the Republicans are in power, you and Dave, I think Divided We Stand probably still has some legs to it, probably as a critic of current
I think
administration.
we intended on ending Divided We Stand if he would have lost um, in 16. Actually, actually no, it was not 16. We've done this for 4 years now, and we contemplated stopping, but it's just never ended. And the interesting thing about Divided We Stand is one of the things that we said is that the situation is untenable, and that's where we say, I mean, who the hell would say Divided We Stand? You're supposed to say, United We Stand, or Divided We Fall. But
Mhm.
it was the reality of the situation, and it relates to right now. I mean, yes, we lost, but that doesn't mean I'm going to jump to the other side. I know that we're right. Just because there's 72 million people who think they're right doesn't mean they're right. Numbers shouldn't matter in that. It's a question. So, it's important to make a statement. I think that you're not going to tolerate it, and actually that's what I did last night. Quite frankly, with Dave didn't like it, but I wasn't going to let those two people. First of all, the one guy,
Mhm.
conspiracy guy, I guess he was an intelligent enough guy, but he was just bullshitting. So I had to address that, and then the attractive barista or whatever she was really pissed at me. I can't let that go, and this is part of that whole idea of Divided We Stand. It was untenable, and I can't help myself. If you're going to talk trash, I have to do something. I mean, I wasn't
Right.
violent.
Otherwise, yeah, what's the point of Divided We Stand, right?
Right. I mean, it's just saying, look, okay, and you know what? Dave was right. I guess they were booing me. I mean, like, people went out of their way to boo me because I'm this guy from the Northeast, challenging them. And as Dave said, they simply said he's wrong. He's wrong. Well, I'm not. You know, um,
Well, yeah, but I can see you guys continuing the show. It will have relevance as a critic, a gadfly perhaps
mhm.
of Trump and his crew.
And
For me,
especially so
I'm
if he does go the route of getting rid of journalists, I don't know if that will happen. The people like myself, we're small potatoes. We might be able to be the place to go to. For
yeah.
just
I mean,
locals.
I don't mind watching you guys now and then. It's not my wheelhouse really,
Right.
politics, and I don't have the knowledge you guys have, and I just and I run a kind of a busy schedule myself. I'm forming book clubs and things. And I got to work on my finances, quite frankly. I mean,
And you got to watch your cat too.
Kitty, yeah. That's why I don't travel, by the way.
You know what? I get that.
I don't take vacations because I don't like leaving him alone. I feel like it's an utter betrayal
It's your
to
duty
leave
because
your animal alone for 7 days. I
right.
just don't believe in it. I never have left him alone.
No,
I don't
I
like it.
I get
I
it.
think you have responsibilities as a pet owner.
Right. In
And
fact, I'm gonna make sure I tell Ron that about you with that, if you don't mind. I think that's
I think you
very
guys
admirable.
took a sacrifice by not having an animal because I know you're very attached to dogs, and
I
there's a
am.
lot of
She's more
dogs.
attached to cats, and I'm more attached to dogs.
No, but the point is, there are a lot of pets that need owners,
And
and
I'm working on that. Right. I'm trying to see.
and I understand your reasons for
I don't
dismissing.
handle. I'm very, I guess, immature when it comes to death. I can't handle pet deaths very well. I can handle human deaths. I can't. I have a tough time with pet deaths. I'm very sensitive to that.
Yeah, if I had a choice to press one of two buttons, one that would save the human race or two save the animal species, I'd hit the button for the animals.
Gotcha. Well,
I just
that's
do
good
it
to
by
know.
policy,
Team Animal, and I'm on Team Animal, and so are you. So, all
you
right,
know.
Paul.
So
I'm gonna shut it down. And for those of you who are still around, hanging out, we saw Keith Boyd from New Zealand was there. Keith, it's good to see you. Everybody else, Bella, Global, Mooney, Veg, Global Solidarity, Joey, Mooney Real,
I
Rare
know a lot of you
Medium,
guys too. And Keith, say hi to the
friends.
McPherson's buddy there. I forgot his name. Name escapes me right off. You know, uh, McPherson's lieutenant down there in New Zealand. Forgot his name. I'm old. I forget names.
Well, Keith. Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, what's his name again? What is the real name
Yeah, I know, and
of?
I can't think of it now for some reason.
I know. It's just, being old sucks, man.
Yeah,
I,
it frightens the hell out of me when I forget. You know, I don't mind getting older. I just remember, I just can't take forgetting. There's certain things that come up when, at least from my opinion, your teeth wear out. You can't focus your eyes as much, and you gray.
you get sleepier more often.
Tell me about
Always
it.
need naps.
Yeah, I mean, it's just 10:30. I try to watch Bill Maher on Fridays, Paul, and Ronnie and I it comes on at 10 o'clock. By 10:08, I can't watch it.
I can't blame you. You know.
I can't physically stay awake.
What's Rare Medium's real name? I recall
I don't know.
Rare Medium.
I don't know.
Always insightful commentary.
Hold on, Kevin Hester. I just remembered Kevin Hester from
Yeah, Kevin. Good guy.
I haven't heard from him in a while, but
I assume Keith. Maybe Keith knows Kevin.
possible.
I
But
don't personally.
Kevin, once in a while, will post on Facebook. I mean, I don't see his post too much. I assume I still have him on the friends list. But yeah,
Gary
he's a good guy.
was a friend of yours and Dave's.
Who's that?
Gary Peacock, I know, is a friend.
Oh, Gary Peacock. Yeah, Gary was watching tonight.
We know Joey. And who's Global Solidarity? He also got good
I
posts.
forget, but Global's always on. Global's cool. Yeah.
Bella Lugosi. That sounds familiar too.
Yeah, he used to be somebody else at one time, I think. Because they change their name sometimes, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah. Of course, I know Sandy, Environmental Coffee House.
There's quite a few that we used to hear from. We don't hear from anymore. But
Veg, of course, I know very well.
Veg has changed his name to like Veg the Aging Hippie or something like that. He had to change it.
Veg is an all-time good guy.
Yeah.
You know?
He wrote me in fact, if Veg, if you're still out there, I doubt it, but he sent me an email, and I didn't get a chance to read it yet. He is another empath, and he's taking this really hard, and he's a Canadian.
Yeah.
So it's tough for him.
That's just not far from me. He lives in London, Ontario.
Sure,
that is not that far. That's basically a little over 2 hours.
Yeah, there are two brothers from London. One plays for the Eagles and one plays for Cincinnati.
I'd love to see Veg in London one day as I'm traveling up there. Would love to see it. It's right off.
You're not too far away.
No, it's right off the 401. It's pretty quiet, boring place, I guess.
That's what he says. He says it's the armpit of Canada.
Yeah, but you know what?
He's a little bit hard on it, though.
The house values have skied up there. I mean, the housing costs in Canada are just outrageous. Outrageous. And
you got to see Veg's channel now. He's got this new camera. He splurged. I think his wife bought him a new camera, and it's really like high quality camera. So his videos are looking really professional and crisp now, and they're very well produced, and they're usually around 10 minutes long, and they're very, very creative. He comes across as this persona of an aging hippie, and he does a great job with his commentary. He's sarcastic, and it helps with the videos.
The credit I give Veg is amidst all this pain and suffering and evil, he's remaining human. That's the best. That's the best compliment I can give somebody. That's veg.
That's veg. I don't think he hung. I think a lot of people. By the way, we made it to 3 hours on this one.
Yeah, I better.
It's like the reality report, so that was pretty good. So listen, we'll have to do this again sometime. And I still have the other channel. We haven't been on there for a long time. So
yeah, you want to run a show now
I'd like
and
to
then?
run a show on my generalist. I mean, it's been a couple of years, so
I mean, now that I'm retired, I got the time.
all right, because the subscribership has gone down there. It's I don't even know what it is now, but I don't think I've made a video since we did one. Like,
do we care about that? Not really, right?
no. Beyond that, first of all, just with the way monetization works with Google, there's just no way. I mean, and I don't particularly like monetization anyway. I like the idea of not having any commercials to get in the way of anything. I don't need ads. I just don't like them. I don't see any. Look, we're small potatoes. So I've said that 3 times today. So I'm gonna stop that. But I never had any real interest in making money in this or anything else for that matter. But that's beside. But I'm 64. I'm not really worried about money. I'm worried about our country. So, all right, Paul. I'm going to sign off. I hope all's well with you, and I greatly appreciate that you came on. I know Dave.
I'm going to leave you with. I'm going to send you a quick message on Facebook, and then we'll sign off. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Paul. I'll wait for the message. Thank you. See you, everybody.